Oh, wait a minute. All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. How is everybody doing tonight? Welcome to the party. Well, really quick, shout out to the replay gang. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you for watching, but you missed the fun part of actually being here live. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, come on through, and you'll never miss a party. Unless I decide to stream randomly, which I do, in which case, just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and then you will never, ever miss a party. I want to give a special thank you to the sponsor of the stream, mysickshirt.com. Whatever your persuasion, they've got something for you. Maybe not that one, maybe not that one, maybe that one, maybe that one. But for all of you, the only place to get your very own official The Indian Jesus merch, only at mysickshirt.com. Welcome, guys. So I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go today. And I landed on it was between two videos done by Destiny. And it was specifically because he got from behind the screen and actually did an IRL in real life change my mind segment, much like the Steven Crowder style. So I thought it would be really cool to check this out. And knowing, of course, that Crowder is a conservative and that Destiny obviously is not a conservative, I was really interested to see how he addressed it, how he came to the table, what his arguments were, all of that stuff. And then I just want to pick apart the different aspects that that people are making, and I anticipate that we're gonna get a little bit better conversations here than we would with a Crowder change my mind, and that's because I mean I don't know this at all, but I have to assume that they are not necessarily at Crowder. They're not necessarily trying to present the best conversations. They're more so looking to kind of preach to the choir. I don't think it's very controversial to say that Steven Crowder is somebody who is for people who already agree with Steven Crowder. If you don't already agree with him, he's not going to change your mind. And that doesn't mean that he isn't, doesn't use facts and isn't that he's fake news, anything like that. But I'm very interested to see where we're gonna go. So I'm gonna leave that poll up for a minute as we get some more people. But we have nobody who is, and I specifically worded it this way: we have nobody who is for Smash Martian. We have we had 4 votes so far. So 2 of you against, 2 of you somewhere in between. And I'm gonna leave that up for a while because I'm very interested to see what everybody says. So, without further ado, let's dive right in.
What kind of pro-life are you?
Extremely. I don't
Extremely.
know. Well,
single cell, moment of conception, it's a baby. Even in cases of rape, you got to have the baby.
That's right.
Yeah, I just say that right at the beginning.
Choice in the past. However, as I've grown older, I've gotten more and more pro-life.
That's probably the absolute worst reason ever to be against abortion.
Yeah. Human life is when the soul is united to the body.
So you might be alarmed by this by saying, "Oh, I don't believe in a soul," but I think that everyone believes in a soul because all I mean by the word soul is
I'm Mario,
Interesting.
and I'm pro-life.
Okay. What kind of pro-life are you?
Extremely. I don't know.
Extremely.
Well,
Single cell, moment of conception, it's a baby. Even in cases of rape, you got to have the baby.
that's right.
Okay, gotcha.
Really? Twice in the first 5
So
minutes?
I just wanted to. It was kind of hard to hear, but if you could talk about where you think life begins again.
Yeah, sure. So when I think of when life begins, I think of the capacity to deploy consciousness because it feels like conscious experience is the thing that we value the most about people. Like if we look to see like who's alive or who's dead at the end of life, like the last lady brought up that having a heartbeat is an important thing. Like when your heart stops beating, that's okay. Even if we can replace it, it's okay. When your brain dies, we typically consider, oh, this person's dead, usually because they can't deploy a conscious experience anymore. Same thing like when people are in comas, the most important question is when are they going to wake up and be conscious again?
So,
But
This is very close to where I used to stand on this issue before I, before I got more into it and realized that I can't legitimately say that I believe that the beginning of life can be anywhere other than conception and it not be just an arbitrary dividing line that I'm making up to make myself feel comfortable. And I still believe that is the case. Just for anybody new, I do think Schmashmorshin, as we call it on this channel, I do think that it is, or the procedure, I do think it is immoral in most cases, but I absolutely do not like the government having any role in people's medical decisions. And so, when it comes to politics and laws, I am pro-choice. So a little bit of a nuanced position there, but basically, what Destiny just said is before I came to that conclusion about life starts at conception, that consciousness, awareness, something along those lines would be the identifier for when life begins. But again, I've been convinced that that is just a thing that I said, and that a lot of people say. But it's just scientifically, there's nothing that happens from after conception, before birth, that changes anything about what is growing, like actual conception. So let's see where our extremely pro-life bro goes with this.
I just don't understand what you mean by conscious experience.
Mhm.
Like what does that mean for a toddler or a very young person?
it feels like I mean I can't give you the exact definition, but in our brain there's a lot of
Exactly.
structures that communicate.
Exactly. So right out the gate, he's saying this is when life starts, when somebody has consciousness. Okay, what is consciousness? Well, I don't know if I can really give you a definition. Okay, then how do you know that that's when life starts? Or even if that is when life starts, how can you tell when life starts if you can't understand, what, and not just Destiny, obviously, just as humankind, the hard problem of consciousness is how it became what it is. But that's the point. You've got to have some clear dividing line. And so now he's already a minute and 41 seconds in, including the teasers. He's already defeated his own argument.
Coordinate with each other to produce whatever is the experience of being a human being, of being like a person. It seems like we around like I think it's around 24 weeks, all of the parts of the brain exist and are communicating that are necessary to deploy whatever this experience is that we call being human.
So, but by consciousness, you don't mean like you're aware you exist. You just like are displaying faculties of an alive thing, right?
Well, I think there can be like alive things that even respond to stimuli that don't have conscious. Like even single cell creatures can respond to light and are
Right.
alive, but they don't have like a conscious experience because they don't have like the necessary brain parts communicating to establish such.
So what you're saying is you're not debating whether because you agree that single-celled organisms can be alive
Yeah,
without conscious experiment. You just
Obviously.
say that the value of life exists once you actually have that experience.
the ability to.
See, already, like I anticipated, this is not the kind of conversation that you see when Crowder does these segments, and I'm fine with that because I know what it is, and I can see it for what it is. But I do, as much as I like Crowder, I do have to caution people against him being your only news source. I think he's a great news source, definitely not a primary news source.
to play. Yeah.
So you can kill off whatever doesn't have a conscious experience like that.
I mean, theoretically, at least as far as abortion goes, yeah. I mean, for other arguments, it would be if you're talking about like external.
Why? Why would it be different? That's a question that if this guy is good at what he's doing, we'll ask.
Meaning all dogs is probably a different thing, but
Well, wait. Well, how is that different?
well, it gets into a whole separate argument on like veganism and animals. But I'm trying to focus on the abortion thing right now.
Well, but I think it's a similar argument, right? If you say that even because the human experience will be different from dogs, right? But
Yeah.
dogs will have consciousness.
They have a type of consciousness. It's going to be different than humans, though, and we treat it differently, right? Like we buy and sell dogs. We don't buy and sell people anymore, or at least in most parts of the world.
Okay, so and
But again, that's muddying the waters of what consciousness is, and therefore muddying the waters on how we determine if that is the deciding factor on when life begins, when life actually begins.
and to go back to your argument about if left uninterrupted, right, a fetus would develop these faculties, right? And what you're saying, because you made the distinction between dogs and humans, so you are admitting that humans do have at least a different value than dogs.
Yep, what is going on to the Binding Rod? Thank you so much for popping by and opening your mouth. Yeah, by myself. But I'm still doing the damn thing. Wherever I am, that's where the party is. And now you are here, so you are at the party. Welcome, brother. Welcome. Well,
Dogs, right? We can
Yeah, I
make
would
that
say so, yeah.
agree for okay. So
I think most people would agree, yeah. Even vegans, I think, would agree, yeah.
hey, we got Tyler in the building. Ba, 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 ba. What's good, brother? Said, I like that Destiny tried this, but I felt he didn't push hard enough. It felt more like people were stating their arguments rather than actually arguing a superior argument. Okay. So I've only skimmed through this, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. And hopefully that will provide me with the opportunity to jump in and give my own opinion on which is the superior argument. But glad you're here, Tyler. Glad you are here, brother.
so what I'm going to is why do you think that if what because what you're saying for the value of this life, right? It will happen, right? Almost in every case, especially with modern medicine. Why is it okay to interrupt the natural process?
Something being a natural, I mean, cancer is a natural process. I don't think that just something being
Well, I
natural.
wouldn't say cancer is not a natural process.
Cancer is a natural process. But that is not relevant because we're not talking about like he's trying to make the argument that just because something is natural doesn't make it good. And that is true. But it also doesn't mean that just because it's natural, it's bad. So that's a non sequitur. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? There are there are stakes to ending a pregnancy that are not the same as ending cancer.
It's an unnatural thing, right?
What does that mean?
I mean, cancer it's a corrupted cell. It's not supposed to happen. It's not a natural process.
I mean, when we start using words, we're describing the universe, and we say supposed to happen. That's a very normatively loaded word. Like, is anything supposed to happen? Like,
Yeah, he is absolutely right. What the argument that the dude should have put forth was that not that it's a natural process, but that the process has already begun. And once the process has begun, then you have a human. That's as simple as it is. Once the process has begun, left uninterrupted, it will result in a human. I'm trying to determine, where exactly Destiny sits on all this, but I guess we'll have to watch a little bit more.
I mean, once you have a developing fetus,
Right.
then the natural process, right? Like the thing that I mean, I don't know how else to word that.
well, I'm just saying that, like, I mean, like, I don't think that things are biologically or in the world are like supposed to happen. They just do happen, right? Like saying something is supposed to or ought to are kind of like human instantiated concepts of like normativity. I don't think that like any.
Correct. But that's not the argument that dude is making. He's not saying it should happen. He's saying it will happen. He never said should. He never said ought. He said will. And the fact is, if you don't have the procedure and let the pregnancy play out, there will naturally be a human baby. That's the argument. So it seems like other dudes pretty good at reining Destiny back in, but Destiny is arguing against a straw man. I don't even know what he's talking about.
Anything is supposed to, as far as like the
I mean, I know what he's talking about, but he's not talking about.
universe is concerned. Things just are. So, insofar as we get old, like, are we supposed to have Alzheimer's, or do we just develop it? Are we supposed to get cancer? Does it develop? Like, I don't know if you say like there's like a
No, but if we to make the analogy more accurate, it would be that no, we are not supposed to get cancer or Alzheimer's or whatever, but it is a fact that if you let somebody live their life, then eventually their body will start to break down. That is a natural process. And so again, that's a non sequitur because that has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
there's a way that things generally develop, but saying supposed to, I think, is kind of it's pretty normatively loaded.
Interesting.
I guess it's not super relevant to this, but like the reason why I would say like even if we do say that like a fetus is supposed to develop into a person, usually when we think of like committing harm, usually we're thinking of like an agent of some type of like thing or being or person that like a harm is being committed to. If I talk about like abusing a corpse, it's a different type of harm than abusing like a living person. And I think the same is true of like a fetus. If we talk about like ending a fetus, that's different than ending something that's having an experience. Like if I kill like
So that's the core argument, that it's experiential. And so if you don't know that you're a human in Destiny's eyes, then you are not a human. That's what I'm getting so far.
a person, there was a person that knew what it was like to be a human whose experience was ended against their like involuntarily, I guess, right? Whereas for a fetus, there's no such person to speak of. There's just like a growing thing that doesn't have that conscious experience yet.
Right, but
And before dude jumps in, I would just completely disagree in the sense that there is not that thing, in the sense that there is that thing. Pregnancy happens. A fetus is a thing. Whether you consider it to be a person or not is the debate. But absolutely, there is a thing there.
I think where we disagree is that you, for some reason, don't think that a fetus has intrinsic value, just
Mhm.
because it will develop this way if left.
There we go. There we go. He did say will develop. And I don't know if you caught that, but Destiny said correct when our dude over here said you don't find intrinsic value in a human fetus. And Destiny said yes. Despite the fact that, as he's now saying, it will develop into a human. It doesn't have intrinsic value.
Uninterrupted, right?
Yeah, I
you're
don't think
saying-
just because
I
something
mean,
will develop in a way
like-
doesn't mean it is the thing that it's developing into.
Right, I agree with.
Wait, what? He had me at the first part of that. Man. Struggle streaming. Come on, fucking play.
Right.
Yeah, I
you're
don't think
saying-
just because something will develop in a way
like-
doesn't mean it is the thing that it's developing into.
Right.
Just because something will develop in a way doesn't mean it is the thing that is developing. I don't know what that means.
I agree with you. In the moment, it has no conscious experience, but
Mhm.
I don't think necessarily that that's a good metric value of
There you
human
go.
life, right? Even among adults, we all have different experience, right? How do you measure which experience is worth
Come on, what the fuck?
more? You can't. And I think there has to be a different measure. If you say like a toddler's experience, right? Because it's very little, and
Hey, Salty Plays in the building. Welcome, buddy. Welcome. We are going through Destiny's version of Change My Mind about pro-choice versus extreme pro-life. Welcome, buddy.
it's. I would even argue that a toddler doesn't even know it's alive or anything, right?
I think they know they're alive.
I don't think so. And
Yep, dude is right. There's a child psychology is an entire field, and they are very aware of when certain things develop, and self-awareness is something that is not, a newborn certainly does not have self-awareness. So this this idea of, well, consciousness develops within the womb, and that's when life starts. It's, well, okay, what type of consciousness? Because we've already gone over how dogs have consciousness, but we don't treat them as humans. And so again, I just come back to the original point that using consciousness, using any of these other metrics is just arbitrary. And as much as it does seem to make sense that, a clump of cells is not a human deserving of personhood, but not always what it seems.
And if compare a toddler's experience to a 30-year-old, right? According to your definition, if you're left between choosing a toddler and a more value, right? He's been left to develop more, has learned more things, experienced more things. So his human experience is much greater than a toddler's, right?
It depends if he's a Trump voter or not. No, but I mean, like the actual thing itself, the actual fetus itself, isn't having the experience worth protecting yet. Now you're saying that like a toddler doesn't, but toddlers do. I think by around 24 weeks, the fetus will have the parts of the brain necessary that are communicating to have that like conscious experience, to begin to like experience what it's like to be something.
I believe Destiny is incorrect, and what he's talking about is what he was mentioning before about being alive but not conscious. I can't remember exactly for sure, but I do not believe that there is a self-awareness level of consciousness that exists until later in the child's life. I mean, fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure.
Now, toddlers might not be as smart, or they might not have like the sophisticated semantic understanding of the world that we have, but they're definitely conscious. They definitely have a conscious experience.
Again, we've already gone over that dogs have a conscious experience as well. I was just talking about the child development, and there's a reason why Peekaboo is a fun game for a 2-year-old, but not a 4-year-old, and it has to do with object permanence. And it just means if you can see it, then it exists. And if you can't see it, then it doesn't exist. And so that's why it's fun for a child who, when you do this, they literally think that you're gone. And then you move your hands and they literally think that you're there again. That comes from a lack of brain development and understanding how the world works. That's why babies need diapers, because they don't have the awareness in their body to be like, oh, this is the time that I need to do this. Again, I'm not 1,000% sure, but I'm pretty sure Destiny is completely wrong about this.
Because all the parts of the brain necessary to deploy one are there, and they will continue developing through until the end of your life, I guess. Or until you're 25 is like the major development. But
So
I mean, would you really say that like a conscious or a toddler isn't conscious?
I'm not saying it's not conscious. I'm
That's
saying
not what
that
he said.
that what it's experiencing at the moment really isn't worth much, right? In comparison to most of its.
That's based on Destiny's argument. That's a great point. That's a great point. If we're talking about levels of consciousness and we're making comparisons, then it becomes all relative. And so theoretically, because they brought up dogs, a dog could be more self-aware than a human, depending on their stage of life. And so does the dog deserve personhood more than the 1-day-old baby? Doesn't really make sense.
Life. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
I feel like toddlers have a ton of experiences. They laugh and smile in response to parents.
I mean,
this also has a lot to do with memory, consciousness, and what they're talking about as consciousness, and the qualia, as it's referred to, the qualia of being a human, that experience of being a human. That is not necessarily again something that can happen without memory and a stream of consciousness to understand from one moment to the next that you are you. The experience of being a person includes your perception of you, the self. And so I don't think that let's check that out for because I don't want to keep repeating. So at what age do children become self-aware? Let's see, between 15 and 18 months. And that is out of the womb, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, toddlers. Between 15 and 18 months. Reflective self-awareness emerges between 15 and 18 months of age, when children begin to match their own facial and or body movements with the image of themselves in a mirror, exhibiting mirror self-recognition. And that's when they can have this experience of me. And there's still, before 15 months, there's still experiential things happening in the mind. But this is why this is all bunk when it comes to the procedure, because even here we're saying live babies. There's a months of when this thing can emerge, can emerge. Can't speak. Shit. But yeah, I think that's pretty clear cut that Destiny is a little bit off base. But given that fact, I still want to engage the conversation. So I want to judge, even though he's so wrong about that, that's going to throw his entire argument out the window. But we can still gain value from the conversation as long as we understand that Destiny is operating on the fact that toddlers are, or that, I guess that would be a toddler, but that children under that age and within the womb have this consciousness that he's referring to. Really? This was not doing this before like 2 days ago.
Hold on.
How much do you remember from your toddler experience?
Exactly.
I don't have a memory of it,
But that's my point, right? Like,
no, that's
it
not the
sounds
point.
like it's
We have a
not
question
very
on when we
important.
begin to solidify memories long term. I think that happens around 2. But that doesn't mean that just because you don't remember things, the toddler's not having an experience.
Right, but what I'm saying that is that it's not very important in comparison to the rest of your experiences, right? And the fact that the toddler will continue to develop and grow into what, I mean, I know you don't like the charged term supposed to be, right? An adult human, but I mean, and that is the natural, left alone, right? Even a toddler will continue to develop.
Well, we can't
right?
say left alone because that's not really true, right? Left alone, it'll die. It requires the mother to continue eating food and like taking care of her body and
Right,
everything.
but
Okay, so then if we're willing to put that out, that we understand that a birthed baby that is 1 year 1 year outside of the womb cannot survive on its own. It still needs its mother. So that begs the question then, not particularly for this point that he's making, but a lot of people bring up viability. So if you say that it's not viable, what do you mean by viable? Because we've just gotten from the pro-choice dude that a baby still needs its mother and will die if left alone. So what's the difference?
again, that's, I mean,
unless he's okay with murdering babies.
that's a natural thing, I would say, that a parent
It's a
taking
natural
care of
thing.
their child.
I mean, it kind of is, but I mean, like, again, very normative, loaded terms. Um, so so at what point then do you think that a life is worth protecting, or what for you defines like a life? I guess.
Conception. And this is, again, I kind of remember this point, and this is why you need to be direct, specifically in this conversation, because a lot of the confusion or the crosstalk happens because people are talking about different things using the same words. And so when you get asked what for you defines a life, then you have to have a direct answer. If you have viability, a heartbeat is better than viability. Brain activity, what does that mean? All of these things, they're arbitrary. I know I keep saying that word, but that's what they are. The only hard line of when new DNA is created. Sorry, he's over. What are you doing? I'm already having internet troubles. Can you lay down, please? Get out of there. Whatever. That's the only point where you get a new process of DNA. Before that point, you have the mother's DNA and the father's DNA. At conception, you get new DNA, and then person develops as a fetus, born, lives, dies. At no other point is there a hard line.
I mean, as soon as Well, I don't know
Say
how
it,
you
bro.
mean that question, but
Conception. You know
for a
exactly. what
human,
it
it begins at conception. Would
There
it be
you
worth
go.
more than any animal? It is worth more than any animal.
What makes it a human life, though?
What makes
The
it human life?
DNA.
Because like if
Fact
I
that
cut
it's
your
got
finger off, it's got DNA. It's human, right?
There you
right.
go.
But if you cut my finger off, it won't.
Right. You're if you I think this is right about what he's about to say. But if you cut your finger off, it's still the same DNA that's you. It's not new DNA being created.
be moving after you cut it. Does that make
Sure,
sense?
but I mean, if I take a
Oh, terrible argument. It has nothing to do with moving. It's the fact that it's the same DNA. You were so close, bro.
piece out of the womb at 2 weeks, it's gonna just die as well, right?
Right, but not if you leave it in the womb, it's going to survive and turn into a baby.
Sure, but if I attach a finger to your arm, it can grow there for a long time. Like that's how they preserve fingers and stuff before they get
What?
surgeries.
Right, I don't disagree. So what's your point?
Yeah.
I feel like it just feels unsatisfying to me, I guess, to say that like, well, it's life just because it has like a set of DNA, even if I feel like we don't ever think of human life in like other terms. Like even when we think of like sophisticated robots.
That's literally the conversation that you're having, Destiny. You can't be like, well, it's kind of weird because I don't really think about it like that. That's the point. You don't think about it like that. And that's why there's a conversation. Hey, we got Mike W in the building. Bah, 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 bah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Mike says when Roe v. Wade was decided, they did not have the science they have now to determine DNA, life, heartbeat, all that stuff. Interesting. Makes sense. Glad to have you, buddy. Glad you are here.
Like, have you ever seen like a movie like it's called Deus Ex? Or no, it's called Ex Machina. I'm sorry.
I haven't. No.
Okay,
I haven't.
Oh, Ex Machina is a great movie. I don't know where he's going with this, but definitely if you have not seen Ex Machina, classic.
Even if we think of these other movies or the new Alien movies or whatever, where it's like, oh my god, is it alive? Like in Star Trek.
Okay, I thought he was going to explain it a little bit. So, long story short, Ex Machina is about a computer dude, and he gets this super secretive job, and he goes to this place, and turns out that there is an AI life form there, and it's a woman. And I won't give away too much because I want you to go watch it, but it has to do with AI and computers and programming and consciousness and all that kind of stuff.
Track data, whatever. Is it alive? Like we're not usually asking like, does it have human DNA? We're usually asking like, does it have a sophisticated conscious experience where it's like got an understanding of what it's like to be something?
All that means, Destiny, is that you're not asking the question properly, or you're not using the words properly. Hell yeah. Who doesn't? If just because you have a certain understanding of things, especially based on what Mike just said, that when Roe v. Wade was decided, that of course we didn't think about it in terms of technology that wasn't invented yet. But now we have the technology. So not really, again, I'm not really sure what his point is. And Tyler's comment is becoming more and more relevant. But that's what I'm here for, guys.
And then all of the natural extensions off of that.
Well, but again, if going back to a toddler doesn't have a sophisticated understanding of what it's like to be things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they do. I think we just fundamentally disagree on that.
maybe.
I think toddlers have a pretty sophisticated understanding of like existing and being human. As their brain is doing a ton of stuff.
I think
Compared to what? Because yeah, their brain's doing a ton of stuff. Are you saying that a fetus's brain is not doing stuff? No, of course you're not saying that. So what are you saying?
Maybe just really hate toddlers. Are you a Pitbull fan?
Pitbull fan? What?
So let's go back to what you were saying of
There you go. Take control, brother.
with like if for example, if we have someone in a coma, right? I know you
Yeah.
talked about this earlier.
Yep.
The difference there, I think, is even I mean that human at the moment is not having a conscious experience. Is that you would
Correct,
agree
yeah.
with that? Okay, so that's different than a fetus because a fetus, right, will have that eventually. A coma, it's like I don't know.
Well, but I
right?
mean,
So my understanding is that when bringing up people in a coma, that's usually more of the pro-life argument, saying that, well, just because they're in a coma, it doesn't mean they're not human. I've always had the a more compassionate, I think, a more compassionate position to the person in the coma, but only because that's already somebody who already has been a person. They already have a mother and father and friends and son, daughter, all that stuff, and you can get instructions on what that person wants if they are ever in a coma. I mean, like my dad knows exactly what I want him to do if I'm ever in a coma. We've had that conversation. I know what he wants me like. We've had that conversation. So whatever happens is done with consent. Don't think fetuses are giving consent to the procedure.
My point for the coma, that's how we decide exactly if a coma person is going to live or die, if they're ever going to wake up again. Because if a coma person is never waking up, we usually say, okay, it's time to pull the plug, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with you there too.
You would keep a comatose person alive forever?
I absolutely would.
And see, I disagree there, for the exact reason that some people don't want to be kept alive. Some people wouldn't want to be in that situation, and so as somebody who can make that decision, unlike the fetus, they get to make that decision. I wouldn't want homeboy here deciding what to do with my life. Not really. I don't know where I was going with that, but just food for thought. Food for thought.
Okay.
At least
I
it's
mean, I
consistent.
just think that the chance of life is worth more than anything, you know? So like if I mean, this is, not necessarily related to abortion anymore, but if the comatose person has a chance to live again, or I mean, have conscious experience like you say, I mean, it's alive, the body's alive, so then absolutely preserve that because it's the one life they have, as soon as they end that, it's over.
That's another good point about brain function and the body doing stuff, as they were talking about earlier. Even though somebody's comatose, even if they need a breathing tube, feeding tube, it's not like their body's not doing anything. It's not like their brain is completely dead, unless they need a breathing tube and a breathing tube, and they need their heart pumped, and they need unless every function of the body has shut down, then we're not talking about the same thing. And as homeboy said, not even related to the procedure anymore. So we're getting a little off the rails, but this guy's almost done.
Okay, I'll ask kind of like a practical question, I guess. Then I'll give you the final word on this. Let's say we have like a ton of comatose people then that all have like a 0.1% chance of waking up. Do you essentially plug these people all up and you just wait indefinitely to see like when they like could wake up again if we know there's like a pretty good chance that they're never going to, or is that like a thing that you would just keep these people, their bodies alive indefinitely?
Yeah, I mean, if I could keep them alive indefinitely until they woke up again, I would. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate that conversation.
Yeah, so that's definitely at least the dude is consistent. That's absolutely consistent logic. I disagree because I think they are different, and the nuances there do matter. But hey, fair enough. So what did you? All right, so let's we got one more person. Whoever hasn't hit the poll, hit the poll. I want 10 votes so we can get actually something that'll show us something. But what did you guys think of this conversation? What did you guys think of these arguments? Let me know in the chat. Moving on to student number 2.
You too.
Yeah, thanks.
Been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My name is Yash.
Josh or Yash?
Yash.
Okay, Yash.
Y-A-S-H.
Gotcha.
Confusion of many coffee places.
Okay, gotcha. What do you got?
So for me, I think in order to determine whether abortion should be legal or not legal, we need to determine whether abortion carries wrongness in the way that we use for legality, right? Which may differ from our personal calculations of ethics.
Exactly. Yash? Yeah, exactly, Yash. I am one of those people who morally and legally, I don't line up with this issue. My morals say one thing, but because of my position on the government, it's very different. So I'm liking this dude already.
I mean, an ass.
He could use a shave and a haircut, but
We don't necessarily deem that an asshole should be a criminal and that a criminal should be an asshole. So I think for Western countries, it's mostly based at the condition for. Sorry.
No, you're good. Generally, we have like
No, no,
we
no!
got like our own kind of moral rules. We all agree on them, and then those get codified later on
Yeah,
into some kind of legal thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the legal codification of wrongness comes from respect for another person's agency. I mean, in order to determine whether abortion is wrong, we should determine whether, we need to know why killing is wrong in the first place, right?
Bars from Mike from Tom McDonald's rap song, "Bacteria is life on Mars, but a heartbeat isn't life on Earth." That's what the science, as who was it? Who were we just talking about? Who was talking about scientism? Oh, the guy who was pretending to be an atheist. Yeah, that's scientism. That's where that'll get you.
So let's determine that. Yep. In order to
why is killing wrong?
And so, in that sense, killing is wrong because it deprives that future of the person asserting their own agency. In order to assert your own agency, in order to assert your will into the world, you need to be alive in order to be able to do that. And this also somewhat subsumes conscious. This also explains why we place such high value in consciousness, because in order to react in a rational way, we need to be able to process the information being able to come to us. So in order to have meaningful agency, we need to be conscious. Now,
yeah. So can I respond to that real quick?
Oh, sure.
So I hear a lot of people make this argument where they'll say, well, there is a potential for life. There's there could be life, there could be decisions in the future. I agree that there could be, but I think that it's important that we don't confuse the two things. I have like all the supplies out to make a building, and I put all of them here, and then I've got like plans and everything to make a building. I have the potential for a building there.
I already know where he's going with this, and he's already so wrong. Let's see. Okay, I want to know if one of you guys can point out the flaw in his argument. I'm gonna run it back. If you can get it before I stop it to talk about, you get a $5 cash app. So let's say, from right here. So pay attention.
That it's important that we don't confuse the two things. I have like all the supplies out to make a building.
So all the supplies out to make a building.
I put all of them here, and then I've got like plans and everything to make a building.
So he's got the supplies and the plans to make and everything to make a building.
Have the potential for a building there.
He has the potential for a building there. I agree. Okay.
The potential of the building is not the building itself. If I were to
The potential of the building is not the building itself. Who can tell me why that is not relevant to a pro-choice, pro-life discussion? We're back one more time. Why is this not relevant? Somebody get that cash app. Come on. What the fudgesicles? What is going on? Struggle streaming. Jesus.
could be, but I think that it's important that we don't confuse the two things. I have like all the supplies out to make a building, and I put all of them here, and then I've got like plans and everything to make a building. I have the potential for a building there. The potential of the building is not the building itself. If I were to blow up all the supplies, I wouldn't say, "Oh my God, you've destroyed the building." I say, "You've destroyed the potential of a building." Right?
Can anybody? I'm waiting. I'm looking in the chat. $5 cash app who can explain why, even regardless of whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, why this is a bad analogy. All right, we'll play it one more time for our boy Sketchy here, or Salty, Sketchy, you know what it is.
All the supplies out to make.
All right, so we have all the supplies for a building. Oh my God!
But I think that it's important that we don't.
Why is this happening?
but I think that it's important that we don't confuse the two things. If I have like all the supplies out to make a building, and I put all of them here, and then I've got like the plans and everything to make a building, I have the potential for a building there. The potential of the building is not the building itself. If I were to blow up all the supplies, I wouldn't say, "Oh my God, you've destroyed the building." I say, "You've destroyed the potential of a building." Right?
Last chance. Does anybody understand why that is not a good argument? Give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that is a bad argument because you can have all the supplies for a building you want. You can have all the plans for a building that you want. But if you leave the plans and supplies alone, you will not get a building. Unlike when you have sex and conception occurs, you no longer need to, there's nothing else you need to do in that process for the result, in this case, the building, or in this case, the fetus, but in the analogy being the building. Of course, it's not the same thing. If you have all the pieces in place for a building, you still need to build it. But if you have all the pieces, being ova and sperm and a womb and all that, if you have all those together, you're done. A baby will result. Rod says, because building supplies don't 304 it up and use it as a form of population density housing. That's very good answer. Close, but very good answer. Really?
When it comes to like abortion, like a fetus represents the potential for future agency and the potential for future consciousness. But a lot of things represent a potential, like a first date could represent a potential for a future baby, right? I think that the potential for life or the potential for consciousness or the potential for future agency is different than the things themselves. And I don't know if like the potential is worth protecting, I guess.
I would just disagree in saying that we're not talking about the potential. We are talking about the thing. We are talking about a building that has already, so, okay, to use his analogy, if you have all the supplies and all the plans to build a building, right? And you start building this building, you actually are putting the pieces of wood together, you're whatever. If somebody blows that up, even though it's not a finished building, you absolutely would say, "Oh no, somebody blew up my building." Any pro-choicers want to tell me I'm wrong on that? This is the worst argument I've ever heard from Destiny. And he says, yeah, I don't know if that's that potential is worth protecting. So he brought up a first date. So yeah, a first date is technically potential for eventually, going through the motions and doing the do and having a child. But there's still more you need to do. So you can bail out. You can abort that child before it is a child. But once it's human, once it has unique human DNA, the building is already a building. Mike says potential would be egg and sperm separated, and then after they come together, the building is built. Exactly. Hey, we got Positile in the building. Welcome, buddy. Welcome. Talking about smashing once again. Welcome, brother.
I see your point there, and I do agree that we need to distinguish between potential for life and actual life itself. Just X implies Y is not saying the same thing as potential for X implies Y. They're different things, as you stated, obviously.
Anybody getting Anirudh vibes from this guy? He's and like, yes, Destiny is correct, and that the potential of something is not the same thing as the thing that you have potential for. But again, we're not talking about potential once you have a fetus, once you have a zygote, once you have an embryo. The potential is it's not the same type of potential. It's just I don't even think potential is the right word. It's just not there yet.
But I would argue that in order to determine the morality of our actions in terms of how much it restricts the agency of others, we not only need to take into account current calculations, but also future calculations in that way. For example, killing an infant would be wrong even if an infant has currently no ability to exert itself in the world as a purely rational agency. And so, because of that future potential is important to preserve. I mean, the effects of our actions do not only propagate to what is currently there, they also propagate to the future, and that's why the future matters.
Sure, that's true, but I would say that like the defense of an infant doesn't require the potential for future choices. I would say that the conscious experience that the infant has right now makes it worth protecting. Like it's having a human conscious experience. And I would say that the baby itself is worth protecting, not because of a future potential. Like,
Just in case you missed it, self-awareness does not emerge until 15 to 18 months. So no, Destiny, you are incorrect.
even if I knew the child was going to die in 1 or 2 years from a terminal disease, I probably wouldn't just toss it in the trash can, right? Because it's having.
Why? Why wouldn't you do that? That's the question that needs to be asked. That's the question that needs to be asked. Why wouldn't you? What's the difference? Because the way that you're talking about it, there is no difference. It doesn't have an experience of being a human. It doesn't have a consciousness in the way that a human has or an adult has self-awareness. So why wouldn't you just chuck out a baby?
An experience right now that's worth defending.
Right, but the very fact that I think most people would consider it more morally defensible to terminate the life of an infant whose life is going to necessarily end in 1 or 2 years is itself a support of the fact that future calculation of agency does matter, or else they would share the exact same moral weight, which I think most people would agree that they don't.
I would agree that there's.
Dude's on point. Dude's on point. The fact that what's going to happen in the quality of that life is a different conversation than whether or not it is life. And even to go all the way back to the beginning of what the other dude said, if you agree that it is alive, then what is it? There's no other category to put it in except human. I mean, obviously, pro-choicers separate a human fetus from a born human being. But scientifically, I don't think there's anything to back that up.
It's going to be like a breakdown of moral consideration in terms of different levels for different types of human conscious experiences. So, for instance, if I could save one 95-year-old cancer patient or 100, 2-year-old healthy children, probably go with the healthy children.
Okay, well, that's backwards. The analogy would be 100 people 100 old people and one 2-year-old a healthy child. Obviously, like, listen to this again. He mixed it up. The conundrum. There's not really much of a conundrum if you have a 102-year-old, 100 healthy 2-year-olds, and 2 old people who are about to die. Obviously, and you have to save one group. That's obvious. The question that should be posed is if you have 200 old people who are about to die and 2 young children or 2 fetuses. So let's back that up and
I would agree that there's going to
listen to how he has it backwards.
be like a breakdown of moral consideration in terms of different levels for different types of human conscious experiences. So, for instance, if I could save one 95-year-old cancer patient or 100, 2-year-old healthy children.
Why in the hell would you say? Why would you let 100 healthy 2-year-olds die for a 95-year-old cancer patient? That doesn't make sense. Again, a good hypothetical would be the inverse, but this doesn't really help us. This doesn't get us anywhere.
Probably go with the healthy children, or even one 2-year-old healthy child, right? Probably go with that. Like within the category of conscious experiences, some are going to be more defendable than others. But ontologically, as a category, all of these things will share some similarities. One of which is like there should probably be protections for them, right? Even if something is more valuable, like even if a $10 bill is worth more than a $1 bill, they're both still currency, right? Even if somebody with more life ahead of them has more value theoretically than somebody with less life ahead of them, it's still life worth protecting.
Even if it's a fetus in a womb versus somebody who's outside of the womb, it's still a life worth protect. Oh, is that not the argument he was making? Oh, my bad.
Yeah, but I think the fact that consciousness does not fully explain the differing levels that exist within the categories implies the existence of some deeper reason. And that kind of deeper reason I explained in terms of respect for personal agency, not only current but also future, is also able to, the fact is also able to explain the value that we hold on consciousness, I think is a more tenable principle than just valuing consciousness in of itself and only valuing consciousness.
So what would be your definition for things worth protecting then, or what are you looking at then, I guess?
So things worth protecting, I would say, is the thing worth protecting is the future value of the ability of a will to assert itself effectively. So a fetus, if not interfered with in the natural course of actions, will grow, will become an infant, which will then become a child, which will then become a teen, and which will then become an adult, which is able to have its rational will to exert itself in the world, and that agency ought to be respected,
So
legally speaking.
Okay, so for your argument, you want to move off of like just it being a conscious experience. You want to talk only in regards to like who has the agency to make decisions.
Yeah, precisely, because I think that provides. It's also able to explain why we value consciousness. It's also able to furthermore explain the differentiations in the values we assign based off of future possible courses of events, like why we may find it more morally reprehensible to kill an infant that is not terminally ill versus an infant that is terminally ill.
Sure. So
In
there's
in
well,
that
there's
sense, it's able to provide a deeper principle
so there's
for
multiple
explaining.
yeah. So there's
your-
a few paths we could go here. So the first question would be then, if we're only factoring in agency here, how do we feel about the fact that the mother for the 9 month term that the pregnancy is being carried is essentially deprived of agency?
She's not deprived of agency. Unless she was R-paid. In which case, we have a slightly different conversation depending on where you fall on things. But depending on when you're falling on things, that may not have anything to do with it. So the agency is deciding to open your legs. If you are an adult, then you understand what can happen. That's agency. Again, unless you're R-paid, then we're talking about an adult making decisions.
I would say that the fact that they had sex and knew that it is possible means that they are using. I mean, I would say you're allowed to use your agency in order to effectively deprive, your agency a little bit. You're able to contractually cede your agency by doing certain actions. Like I cede my, like I s- like by living in a state with certain laws. Whenever I
Yup.
break those laws,
There
I
you go.
cede my agency to be a completely free agent by going to prison. And so
That is a fantastic argument, Yash. There is agency, but there are things that you do. This was the big argument about Kyle Rittenhouse and the people that he shot, about their agency and their rights and their whatever. You, as Yash put it, you cede your right to those things. In this case, you cede your right to what happens to your body when you do certain things that you know can result in those things happening to your body. In the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, what was the dude's name? Rosenbaum, Grosskreutz, and skateboard dude, the other dude. They ceded their right to life when they decided to attack another person. Good on Yash. Good on Yash.
So, in that sense, the fact that someone has sex and they know that this can be a logical consequence of sex
Yup.
and they consent to sex is itself, uh, is itself, uh, I would say, is a voluntary ceding of that agency in case the mother gets pregnant.
And of course, I bet you he's about to bring up RPay.
Okay, and then in cases where there's involuntary sexual release, like rape,
Okay.
do you think that you're justified in having an abortion in those cases, or
I think you are justified in having an abortion in those cases because you are justified in doing what it takes to preserve your agency against the non-consensual acts of others. So, for example,
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I would 1000% be in favor of exceptions for both of the two things that everybody comes up with, for RPay and for to save the life of the mother. I'd be okay with that. It doesn't make it okay to end that life, but specifically in the case of when it's either the mother or the child, then that goes back to my argument about the comatose person versus the fetus, where somebody, the mother already has a life. They already have, there's a lot more of a loss if the mother dies, whereas maybe in the eyes of the parents, it's a bigger loss for the child. Looking at it societally, I think that's a it sounds rational. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that a good, dividing line? Is that fair, or what do you guys think?
if you had like an empty trolley going on a path and splitting into two tracks, and you were on one side tied to an end, and another person was on another side, and you had a lever right next to you that could turn the trolley to going the other side when it's currently going your way, I would say it is morally permissible to pull that lever because you
Y'all remember the trolley
are
problem?
simply doing what is necessary to preserve your own agency. And I would say it is okay to value your own agency above that of others when they come into conflict, not based off your own voluntary action.
Yash is on point. I like this dude. He's very he speaks in a very esoteric way, but he's making good points. What else can you ask for?
What if you're having sex with protection? Do you think that's you're still sacrificing your agency there, or?
Yeah, because sex with protection, you're still an adult that knows that protection can still, even with protection, it can still possibly yield the consequences of pregnancy because protection is not infallible. And as an adult with full mental capabilities, you're expected to know that when you engage in sex.
What about for children that engage, like I say children, but like 14, 15, 16-year-olds that engage in sexual activity? Should that just be part of the expectation that their full idea of all the ramifications of sex is known, or?
As opposed to what? As opposed to what? So if you're 15 and you're in a consensual sexual relationship and you get pregnant, then, I was 15, I didn't know. That makes it okay to end the human life? That's the argument with people who are against having exceptions in the procedure for specifically for RPay. And the argument is that even though the mother was traumatized, that is still a life in her womb, and that is an innocent life, and they don't deserve to be ended because of what somebody else did. Now, I feel like that is, philosophically, that is, I completely agree with that notion, but realistically, I don't think that that's a good way to run society. But it is what it is.
That is a good case to think about, and I think that goes.
Why is it a good case to think about? What's different about 15-year-olds in consensual relationships? How does that change what a fetus is or isn't?
Back to the ability, I think I would say it is permissible to have an abortion in those instances, only because you are you currently do not have the culpability because you do not have the full rational agency of yourself to in order to cede your agency, and therefore all you're doing is you're protecting your future agency against attacks from your current non-agency.
So if you're 15 years old and you steal a car and drive it into, yep, there you go. Obviously, whatever. This is exactly where I was going. Exactly where I was going. I was going to use a little a softer version, but Positel's exactly right. I can't obviously read that, but I was going to say if I'm 16 and I steal a car, or actually, yeah, let's say I've got my learner's permit. I'm 16 years old. He just said 15, 16, right? If I've got my some places in the country you can get a learner's permit at 15. So let's say I've got my learner's permit. Does that mean that because I'm only 15 that I can drive drunk and kill somebody and not have to deal with the consequences because I didn't know any better? I don't think Destiny would agree with that.
which
Okay.
effectively acts as another person.
I don't know why Yash is.
Gotcha. So we've got abortions for minors. We've got abortions for rape victims. Then okay. So this is the third track of question that I would have then. If we're worried about the potential for life, the potential for agency, and not the thing itself, how would you address, like, let's say two people are going on a first date or whatever? How do you identify when the potential for life exists?
New, unique, human DNA.
I would argue that the potential for life exists as a biologically continuing organism. Like, for example, like if you had if you prevented like a sperm from fertilizing an egg, I mean, in a sense, that is stopping the potential, but it's not stopping the potential of the actual fetus in itself. It's preventing the potential of the sperm, which is not the. Or sorry, let me.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
this is the hardest part I think for your to address would be that, like, if I have an abortion, it's wrong because I've stopped the potential for life to develop. But if
No, it's wrong because you have stopped life. That's why this whole potential and whether that doesn't matter. It already is life. You're not stopping the potential for life. You are ending what already is a life.
I use a condom, I've also stopped the potential for life to develop. We don't care about the thing itself, and we're only looking at some future.
Wait, what?
If I have an abortion, it's wrong because I've stopped the potential for life to develop. But if I use a condom, I've also stopped the potential for life to develop. We don't care about the thing itself, and we're only looking at some future hypothetical where it does have choices or agency. It feels like birth control is essentially the same as abortion in that case, because I'd still be stopping that potential for.
No. No. Because sperm is not unique DNA. The sperm in your nuts, you spunk, has the same DNA as your hair or your fingernails or any other part of your body. I mean, it's really that simple. I'm flabbergasted that he's yeah, exactly. It's that's still the potential. That's the potential. So again, it's about the I guess in this sense, the potential matters and where it goes from potential to actualization. As Mike's saying, when sperm's in the condom, it's still potential. Once it meets the egg, and I don't know exactly, if there's another, what the exact process from the moment the sperm meets the egg to when unique DNA is born, but it is what it is. Mike says potential doesn't matter. We're not arguing potential exactly, but you can see how Destiny is doing a good job of having the conversation that he wants to have. And so his argument is that, well, the potential and the thing are not the same thing. And so now he's arguing the straw man of potential when Yash here is not able to see that Destiny's moved the goalpost from the fact that or the question of whether or not a fetus is life to now, because it has the potential to become a human being, that it's somehow different. It's the old bait and switch.
Right, but what you're
Not right.
stopping does not actually exist yet. In the case
There
you're
you
not
go.
preventing that future of life. You're stopping it from existing in that first place. That
Ba, 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 ba,
future of life only
ba.
comes to exist once that object in of itself comes to exist. And as two separate objects, the sperm and an egg, those exist separately and not as the thing in of itself as the fetus.
There you go.
Yep, and I kind of agree with you, but the problem is that
What do you mean you kind of agree? That's not like an opinion statement. A sperm and an egg are different things than a human fetus or an embryo or whatever at whatever point. They're different things.
That you're not worried about the thing itself, you're only worried about the potential of the thing. Because my argument would be the thing itself has no value. Because if we go circular, so I'm essentially saying if you stop somebody from getting pregnant or if you have an abortion, it's essentially the same thing in your world. And then you would say, well, no, the fetus already exists. And if you use contraception, you haven't had the fetus existing yet. And then I would
Right.
say, okay, well, then you're worried about the actual fetus itself, not just
Right. Exactly. So he said, let me just back it up. Worried about the fetus itself. That's the whole point.
fetus existing yet. And then I would say, okay, well, then you're worried about the actual fetus itself, not just the potential. You're worried about the fetus.
Right.
Say, no, it's not the fetus. The fetus has the potential. It's like, well, there was the potential beforehand. But
those things are not mutually exclusive. The fact that a fetus has the potential to be a birth human does not prevent it from also being a human. Those are not mutually exclusive things. Both those things can be true at the same time.
you stopped with a condom instead of like a plan B. So I don't know what the difference would be there if you're protecting the potential of the thing rather than the thing itself.
Right, but we're talking about the potential for a certain future thing to occur, and the potential is attached to this given object. But you can't attach a potential to an object if that object does not exist yet.
Right.
Well, why not? Like there's a
What are you
potential when
attaching
you
it to?
well because as part of your earlier consent or agency argument that when you go to have sex with someone, there's always the potential for life. That's baked into your like denial of somebody to have an abortion, right? Like when you have sex with somebody, you consent that the potential right there already exists. That's already being protected at the moment of potential conception.
But again, bringing up Mike's comment, we're not arguing potential. It's going right over his head. He said it out loud. You don't care about the potential. You care about the fetus. Yes.
So it seems like there is a defense baked in there to even before the fetus is formed, unless you want to say it only starts once the fetus is formed.
Exactly. That is what everybody's saying, Destiny. You just said it yourself too. It only starts once the fetus is formed. And by a fetus, we mean the whatever prior states, whether it's a zygote or an embryo or whatever, that we're all that's all the same thing. He's acting like there's a difference between a fetus and a baby in the same way that there's a difference between a toddler and a teenager. Well, there is, but not relevant to whether it's okay to kill it. There is a lot of differences between a toddler and a teenager. But neither of them is it okay to end their life. Why is that? Because they have personhood. And we want to protect personhood, especially innocent personhood.
But then I would ask why the potential life of the fetus and not the sperm and the egg beforehand. In which case,
DNA. Pause says sperm and egg are the supplies, which means they are the potential. It's not potential when these two are unified. Exactly.
so you don't have to talk about the thing itself, I feel.
Right, but
I feel.
I mean,
My ex-girlfriend used to do that. I got to run that back because that's so funny. She and it was cute because she's a girl and not a dude. But she would say like, this movie is bad. I feel. It was a cute little thing. But I guess that's how I guess Destiny talks like my ex-girlfriend.
In which case, you don't have to talk about the thing itself, I feel.
right, but I mean, there is no contradiction. I think you think there's a contradiction between talking about the potential of the thing and the thing of itself, which I think.
Exactly, Yash. Not mutually exclusive. Both of those things can be true at the same time.
The potential of what is possible to happen versus what that potential is attached to. And so I would say that if you're denying the potential of future agency, what you're denying is that future agency, but what that future agency is attached to is that fetus in of itself. It's not attached to the sperm or the egg because they transform into something different once it's fertile.
Okay, I'll give one more response and then I'll give you the last word so we can have some other people.
This seems like, oh fuck, he got me.
So my main point is that I feel like we can either talk about the thing itself. So for me, I'm talking about the thing itself, and the thing that I want to protect is a conscious experience, the ability to deploy one. Or we can talk about a more kind of nebulous topic of the potential, the future potential of. And I feel like attaching the future potential of a thing to I feel like attaching a future potential to a particular thing is a really hard thing to do, right? Because theoretically, like the future potential of a fetus of one cell is nothing until it divides and grows more. I mean, you might say that's kind of the natural process of things, and it could be unless you get an abortion or have a miscarriage. It's hard to even say that, but yeah, I feel like looking into the future.
But a miscarriage is a miscarriage is an anomaly. That's not typically what happens. That's not. I mean, as frequent as it does happen, because it's not like super rare, but as frequently as it does happen, it still is an anomaly and goes against the natural process of what is supposed to happen. And again, I know that triggers destiny, but in the same way that you can be born with a congenital disease or of some sort, like that's still natural, but that doesn't mean that that's like I don't I had an issue with the first dude using the phrase "supposed to," but it makes sense. We colloquially, he definitely understands what we mean when we say "supposed to happen" in terms of how nature usually plays out. So I think I missed when Mike said, if I was an arsonist and burned up lumber, I would not be prosecuted for arson of a house. Yeah, this is the argument that Destiny specifically brought up earlier. He's like, if I have all the supplies to build a building and all the plans and everything, that has the potential to be a building, but it's not a building. I'm like, yeah, because you still have to build the building. With the fetus, you've already built the thing. So they're not the same thing. It's just completely just a not good analogy.
Potential building, it's hard to say, well, that starts at this particular moment, because now it feels like we're talking about the particular thing and not the actual future potential anymore. It feels like
let's hear this again. Because I was talking about, all of these dividing lines of when this starts, it's arbitrary. So I want to make sure I understand what he's saying here. I think he's catching himself one more time, speaking out of both sides.
Or should have a miscarriage. It's hard to even say that. But yeah, I feel like looking into the future potential building, it's hard to say, well, that starts at this particular moment, because now it feels like we're talking about the particular thing and not the actual future potential anymore. It feels like we're dancing between those two positions depending on.
No, you're dancing. Anybody who is morally pro-life is very clear about the fact that it's not potential. Fetus is not potential. The fetus itself is what they are protecting. It's the fetus itself, not some idea of what the fetus could be. The fetus itself. It's quite simple. You really have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to be morally pro-choice, or I should say pro-schmortion. It's making it more complicated than it needs to be to justify, honestly, sexual deviancy and using the procedure as birth control.
And what we want to defend. So I'd rather just look at the actual thing itself I would defend, which would be the conscious experience that I think we're generally concerned with. And then I'll give you the last word on it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking about the future potential, we're still attaching that we're still talking about the future potential of agency of some object in itself, right? And so, in order to talk about the future potential, we need to identify the object which we're talking about, which is not the individual pre-fertilized gametes, but rather the fetus, which in the natural course of events will grow to be an adult. So it's not preventing. So therefore, it's not necessarily a positive action to prevent the future of life to not have sex or to use.
Exactly. So under Destiny's thinking of using protection as stopping the potential, then that would mean that simply abstaining from sex is also in the same category as the procedure, because there's the potential there. Like, what are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? We're just saying, once you have a thing, that thing is a thing. That's it. That's the whole argument.
But rather, it's preventing that future possibilities to even come into existence in the first place by preventing the existence of the object for which that future is attached to.
Okay, cool.
Well
listen, I
done.
appreciate it, Yash. Thank you very much.
Well done. Well done. What did you guys think of Yash here? It says Josh in the comments, but he made a very strong point about how coffee shops always get his name wrong. So we won't dead name him or misgender him or anything like that. We will call him Yash, not Josh. What did you guys think of him? I think he, like I said, he's a little bit. Oh, I'm seeing some L's in his own chat. But yeah, I think that so far Destiny is 0 for 2. And he has this convenient way of just being like, okay, well, I'm going to say a thing and then give you the last word, as if we've reached some common ground, as if we've made a point. Again, as Tyler was saying earlier, he's kind of just putting it out there. I'm trying to think about what Destiny feels, trying to be like, oh, Steven Crowder, changed my mind. That's a good idea. I'm going to do that. Like, it's Crowder. I could do that. I debate people. I'm a debate me, bro. And then we get this.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck. Good job.
So there's two more. So there's two more people. There's this guy and another guy. I'm thinking, since it's Friday night, I'm thinking of doing an online panel instead of moving it to Discord. If you guys are gonna be good, or there's another IRL change my mind that that Destiny did that we could we're not gonna be able to get through the whole thing, but we could check out some of that. So think about what you want and let me know.
Hexter, what's up? Speak into the mic
Hector.
again. Speak loudly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
All
defending fetuses right now. Okay. Speak seriously.
Yeah. So traditionally, I've been pro choice in the past. However, as I've grown older, I've gotten more and more pro life.
Okay.
I think for me, the arguments about consciousness have become completely unconvincing. To the point where I think nobody knows what consciousness is, and they don't know. Everyone draws a different line of
Facts.
consciousness.
Facts.
You could ask somebody, and they're like, it comes out at birth, it comes out at conception, or there are people who don't even know that human beings are conscious.
It's not even some people. This is a philosophical impasse. It's called the hard problem of consciousness and is specifically relevant to the fact that we don't know how conscious works, how it emerges, all of that stuff. Specifically when it emerges. Certainly not the day or the moment that it emerges. And so to use something that we understand so just so little as a defining marker as when a human life begins, and before that you can end that process, is crazy. It's just it's not scientific. It's not it's not logical. Well, I guess it's logical, but it's certainly not scientific. Mike says consciousness should not be a part of the argument. Why not? Why don't you think so? Because I do think it is relevant. And if you're talking to people who are simply not going to accept that, a fetus in the womb is the same as a person, then I do think it's relevant to be able to have these types of conversations where, especially, I assume some of you religious guys are no except, we just did the poll, no exceptions at all. But we know that there's such a strong push in the other direction. And when it comes to politics, we've all got to concede some ground. We've all got to, make compromises. So why is it that you think that consciousness should not even be part of the conversation? That's an interesting point there.
For sure. So for me, I think the more convincing argument has more to do with family formation and
Family
disincentivizing it
formation.
more as a whole. I think that the technologies for abortion should get better.
So this is more of a utilitarian argument and saying that, well, we want to build families, and that's why we shouldn't end the lives. So Positile asks, can you define consciousness? No. I don't think I have a good understanding of how to define it. I have an idea of what consciousness is, but I think it is a very just it's just not a very well-known thing as far as whether it's philosophically or psychologically. We just don't understand it as humans. So a dictionary, Oxford, gives us consciousness, the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings, the awareness or perception of something by a person, and the fact of awareness by the mind of itself and the world. So this is the one that I think is most relevant to the procedure. Because again, look at the example they give for the first one of the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. That's the example they give. She failed to regain consciousness and died 2 days later. So that's not really again, that's the difference between the comatose person and the fetus. Then you go down to the second definition, and it says awareness or perception of something by a person. So that would fall more in line with what Destiny is saying. But again, if you look at the example they give, her acute consciousness of Mike's presence, it's more about, again, going back to this idea of being aware and not just the experience, not just your sensory input, but that you're actually having an experience that you understand, that you're aware of. And so I think this definition, the fact of awareness by the mind of itself and the world. And then we look at the example. Consciousness emerges from the operations of the brain. And so that seems definitely like the closest thing that we're talking about when it's in relation to the procedure. Mike says, I think consciousness is more subjective and objective. You mean more subjective than objective? I don't disagree with you, but what is consciousness? As we just went over. Salty Play says consciousness would be, in my opinion, would be someone who's aware of the actions and consequences of what they do and those around them. Yep. Yeah. That's pretty much. I'm right there with you because there, as we can see, there are different versions of how to define it. But I think the most relevant to the Smash Martian conversation is this one. So, you good, brother. You good, brother. You guys agree? Disagree? Yeah, I don't 100% know where you were going with this one, Mike. If you want to elaborate a little bit on that, and let's dive back into it.
I think they should
Oh,
get
Jesus.
safer, but at the same time, they should be more and more disincentivized than they are now. I think the attitude that a lot of progressives have that anybody should have an abortion, that it's more like something people do. It's like their first choice in their mind. I think that's a really bad attitude to have. And again, not a lot of people probably have it, but I think that idea still persists, and we should reduce that idea as much as possible.
So again, he's talking about the fact that people use the procedure as birth control, and he's not in favor of that. And it doesn't seem like he's saying that he personally believes that a fetus is the same as a person. He hasn't said that he doesn't think that, but that's not the argument that he's making.
Gotcha. So, I do agree that the pushing abortion all the time is really cringe. For people that do that, you can't be that extreme for a variety of reasons, not related to whether or not the fetus is protected or not.
Hey, we got Alex Pickus in the building. What is good, bro? Glad to have you. Glad to have you. We are just trying to determine whether Destiny understands why people are pro-life in the first place. Not only does he have a good argument for him being pro-choice, but does he even understand why people are pro-life in the first place?
The first part of your argument you brought up, you said the conscious part was unconvincing. Have you ever heard of Loki's wager?
I'm sorry?
Loki's wager.
Loki's
Okay,
wager.
I'm gonna butcher this, but
Okay, so I was gonna let's not have it butchered. Loki's, what was it called? Loki's wager. Is that what he called it? Wager. Let's get a video on this shit. I don't feel like reading. All right.
Norse mythology is a little frustrating to research. We only really have two sources to draw on. There's the Poetic Edda, which is a collection of anonymous Old Norse poems, and the Prose Edda, which was written in Iceland by Snorri Sturluson. And both of them date to at least a century after the region was fully Christianized. And while there's a lot of content in these Eddas, the fact that none of it is pre-Christian has frustrated researchers for centuries, because it can be very hard.
Hey, we got Brandon L. Jet in the building. Bah, 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 bah. Welcome, Brandon. Welcome. Glad to see you, brother. Mike says a fetus is non-conscious, but it's life. That's what I thought we were debating. Is the important part. I agree with you. But again, the point that we're not just looking at whether Destiny has good arguments for being pro-choice. We're also looking at whether or not he understands what the pro-life position even is or what it represents. Because once we he is a thought leader in this space. And so if he doesn't even get it, then we got a lot of work to do. Even though when it comes to the law, I am pro-choice. I want as few procedures done as possible. I don't think the government should be telling people what they should or shouldn't do, but that doesn't mean that I want people doing that thing. So I think that's so he's bringing up Loki's wager. Let's start that.
Norse mythology is a little frustrating to research. We only really have two sources to draw on. There's the Poetic Edda, which is a collection of anonymous Old Norse poems, and the Prose Edda, which was written in
Really?
Iceland by Snorri Sturluson, and both of them date to at least a century after the region was fully Christianized. And while there's a lot of content in these Eddas, the fact that none of it is pre-Christian has frustrated researchers for centuries, because it can be very hard to tell how much of it is original and how much of it is a Christian addition. For instance, there's a very jarring segment in one 14th century attestation of Ragnarok that mentions that there's this god of gods who can't
Ragnarok, I know that.
be named by the Skalds and created everything. It comes to the surviving Aesir after Ragnarok and is only ever referred to as Fimbultyr, which literally just means mighty god and is only used as an epithet for Odin outside this specific context. Scholars mostly agree that this whole there was another god the whole time and they're super cool and we can't say their name and also they were cooler than all the other Aesir and they created the whole universe is probably an extremely obvious bit of retroactive Christianization. What the real frustration is, without earlier sources to compare to, it's almost impossible to tell for sure what else might be a similar retcon. And this really gives us trouble when it comes to Loki, who has a tendency to get rewritten as actually Satan due to his role in triggering Ragnarok and also his general bad attitude. Many later translations of the Eddas will go out of their way to call Loki a serpent, an epithet that he never has outside of that context. So it can be hard to tell how much of Loki's
Just tell me what Loki's wager is.
genuinely malicious attitude is a later addition, or if he was just supposed to be some kind of relatively harmless mischief maker in the original version. The fact is, aside from killing Balder, Loki mostly just causes problems on purpose and then gets cartoonishly walloped by the
I
consequences.
don't
He's
care.
not some glamorous prince of darkness. He's a Looney Tunes antagonist. And very few stories
Okay.
illustrate this better than that time he
Jesus
nearly got
Christ.
his head cut off for no reason. So our story begins, as so many do, with Loki getting bored and deciding to make trouble. And for today's zany scheme, he decides to cut off Sif's hair. Now, two things about Sif. One, her long golden hair was one of her most striking characteristics, and
Who wants to bet this is the part of the stream that gets claimed and blocked and everything? I'm gonna have to cut this part out anyway.
possibly representative of fields of golden wheat representing a fertility aspect to her divinity, and two, she's married to Thor. So neither of them take this sudden hairstyle adjustment very well, and Thor promises to break every bone in Loki's body unless he finds a way to fix it. So Loki runs off to the dwarves, who in Norse mythology are magical smiths capable of crafting some pretty incredible things. Loki commissions them to make Sif some replacement hair, and they craft a set of magic golden hair that'll grow just like the real thing once she puts it on. And then I guess they get bored or something, because they also take the time to forge the legendary spear Gungnir and the legendary boat, oh god, Skithblathnir, whose most noteworthy quality is its ability to fold up and fit into a pocket when not in use. But I guess when there's no one else around to make trouble for, Loki will make problems for himself, because he makes a bet with Brock the dwarf that his brother Sindri can't make 3 artifacts even cooler than the ones they'd already made.
All right, sounds like we're actually getting to the actual wager.
The wager is Loki's head, and with the stakes needlessly elevated, Brock and Sindri get to work. Loki wastes no time in cheating, obviously, and turns into a stinging fly to distract Brock while he works the bellows. But Brock stays stoic throughout the forging of the first 2 artifacts, and only momentarily cracks to swat at him when they're prepping the metal for the 3rd one, causing some of the iron to become unusable. With the 3 artifacts forged, Loki, Brock, and Sindri head to Asgard to present the goods. Thor and Sif are very satisfied with the hair, Odin is happy to have a new spear, and Freyr gets the amazing collapsible boat. Then Brock and Sindri unveil the 3 bonus artifacts. The first is a golden boar named Guldenbursty that can run over water or air and also glows in the dark.
What is
The
happening?
second is a magic ring for Odin called Draupnir.
Fuck it. I'm just let's just let him just explain whatever he wanted to explain. This is not helping, and it's annoying. All right, so Loki's wager.
I think Loki's like gambling with some dwarves or something, and he ends up gambling his head away, and he loses because he needs to for the analogy to work. But as he's wagered, he said, "You can cut off my head if you want to." Okay, and they go to cut his head off. They say, as part of the agreement, you can cut my head off, but you can't take a single inch of my neck. And the dwarves, they have him laid out, and they're getting ready to cut his head off, and they argue they can't figure out like, well, where does the head start and the neck end?
So this is exactly the same thing as the toddler versus the teenager. When does a person go from a toddler to an adolescent to a teenager to a young adult to so on and so forth? Kind of kicking myself that we couldn't have just listened to him explain that. But it is what it is.
Very vague, right? Now, we wouldn't argue that because you can't figure that out, Loki doesn't have a head. We would just say there's like some vagueness around the edges there. Sometimes people will give the argument that something is very difficult to understand or very nebulous or amorphous, therefore it doesn't exist. I agree that consciousness is very hard to define, but I don't think that just because it's hard to give an exact definition of it means that we'll treat it as though it's not like a thing. Because I think that when we look at how we talk a lot about
That's
coma
fair.
patients today, when we look at like comatose patients, I think that's pretty instructive on how we view consciousness. That if a person is in a coma and they're never going to wake up again, we say, okay, well, we can probably kill this person. We don't even really consider killing it. Well, we kind of do, but it's like pulling the plug because we know they're not going to wake up. And if they're not going to wake up, all the parts of their body that might be functioning, the heart beating, the kidneys working, even the brain having blood flowing through it, they don't have that conscious experience. What's the point?
What is the conscious experience of having blood run through your brain? Are any of you familiar with what that feels like or what that is like? What are you talking about, bro? Loki's wager is actually a perfect thing to refute the pro-transformation position. Exactly because you can't tell where Loki's head stops and his neck begins is exactly why you can't pick a time in a fetus's development to determine that's when it starts. That is the point. That only at conception can you determine that this is the start of something new. We got no freedoms in the building. What is up, brother? Said so people are okay with women lying their child. Yeah, Destiny is not that smart in many issues. I would disagree. I mean, well, if you, in the sense that I think he is smart in many issues. I'm sure there's many issues where he's not smart. And I would say that this is not one of the areas that he's not smart. He's just wrong. And I don't know if you're trolling, but you know it's a dog, right? I don't think it's a matter of not being smart, because you have plenty of people. You have plenty of people who are legitimately intelligent, who are pro-choice. And it's just they have a different belief about when does life begin. Freedom says, I wonder if he'd be okay if a man was to trick a woman into taking the pill. Interesting question. I mean, I would assume based on just basic consent that he would take the woman's side.
And so I feel like that's the thing that I usually focus on in terms of like, when is a life worth defending? Because we figure life ends when consciousness ends. So I would say probably begins when consciousness begins.
Probably, maybe, I think. So let's just kill people and things and on a maybe. On a maybe. It's maybe, right? Maybe's good enough.
So your focus on being pro-choice is that you believe there's some sort of consciousness somewhere.
Yeah, I think that the rough estimate right now is around 20 to 24 weeks. All the parts of the brain are in place and are communicating in such a way that if you're going to have a conscious experience, it's probably happening around then.
Yeah, I'm not confident enough in that.
Sure.
But what are your thoughts on the societal disincentives for it? Because I think family formation and I guess birth rates are really important for society as a whole. And I think incentivizing good family formation rather than bad family formation in general is good for society.
I don't disagree with him, but just like the potential argument, that's not really relevant. I think the personhood argument, when is this a person? When is this a human? Whether or not it's good for society is, again, a non sequitur. Because you wouldn't take, this is the question about killing baby Hitler. I mean, we're gonna make that a poll. Actually, it's not that simple, and it's not about whether the question with killing baby Hitler is that that's a baby, and we know what Hitler did, but it's not that simple. It's not that simple. So I definitely want to hear. I'm putting up a new poll, and everybody better hit it.
Yeah, so people make the argument that because our birth rates are low or whatever, family formation might be a reason. I think this is probably the absolute worst reason ever to be against abortion.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
Opposite. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, this is the worst reason to be against abortion.
Opposite. Family formation might be important, but like that
Yep.
doesn't mean we want to force people to have kids,
Yep.
especially the ones that at the most don't want them to have them, because like that's probably not the types of families you want to be forming.
I agree with
right?
that, yeah.
It also does a lot of damage to. I mean, like
that poll.
Future damage is caused when a child is raised in a subpar environment because the parents either can't provide for it or don't want to have it, and then the parents' lives are adversely affected. If you're a 19-year-old woman and you get pregnant, your life is now on a totally different trajectory than if you're allowed to finish school, get a job, or whatever. If you're forced to carry a pregnancy to term. So yeah, I don't think the family formation argument is very compelling when it comes to saying like these are reasons why we should make abortion illegal.
I completely agree with Destiny there. There's just I think that the guy is right I agree with his value in family formation. It's just that's not the sanctity of life is a higher thing than that. Higher thing. I don't know. Mike says killing baby Hitler, we have hindsight. Not fair. I have never heard that before. I've never heard anybody say that. And that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Because we do know. It's not you're right. That's a perfect answer. Because it's not about the potential. Because we already know from hindsight who Hitler's going to become. So fuck yeah, I'm killing baby Hitler. Freedom says once the sperm enters the egg and new cells start to form, it is a real human. If you don't want a child or procedures, then close your damn legs. Yeah, that's pretty much where all of us, I think, have been in this stream so far. Freedoms goes on to say, okay, so we can kill the first baby human. I mean, why are we acting like Hitler was the only? I mean, we're not. It's just an easy example. The only worst person. That's not English. The only bad person here. If we were to kill Hitler, then a lot of other lives would have. If we were to kill Hitler, then a lot of other lives would have been lost. So without Hitler, there would have been more than 6 million Jews or 6 million people that died. I think you got that backwards. A lot of people would have lived if there was no Hitler. I mean, obviously, we don't live in an alternate universe where Hitler didn't exist, so I can't say that with 100% certainty. But I think it's a rational assumption that if one person was responsible for 6 million people dying, and you kill that person as a baby, those 6 million people are likely to live at least a little bit longer and certainly a better life.
It kind of sounds like an incubator argument that like we're going to force women to have kids because we need more kids. If you want to incentivize births, I think there are other ways maybe you could do
No,
it.
that's true. No, I agree. There's a danger in going to the incubator argument. However, I think like there's a way to incentivize family formation without, I guess, telling people that if they have a kid, they have to keep it. You know, I definitely think just having that thought that every time you have sex, this is a possibility. Which
Yup.
I guess if you're going into conscious experience, it's like, is that person fully conscious when they consent to having sex?
Oh yes, they are. And of course, if we're not talking about ARPE, but yes, you are fully conscious, and if you give consent, then you're giving consent to the possibilities of what happens when you give consent. No Frame says, "How dare you talk about my bad English, even if you are correct. Also, you forget a lot of medicines and breakthroughs were found by Hitler's experiments that saved millions of lives. So, you think it was worth the Holocaust to get the medicines because we wouldn't have been able to develop those medications without Hitler? Seems to me that whatever was discovered in the 1940s because of horrible experiments, in 2022, we probably would have gotten those same things, but with a lot better conscience. Again, we don't have the alternate reality, so it's a fair argument, but I wholeheartedly disagree. I mean, just look at America. I don't know what that means. I look at America every day. What are you talking about?
You know?
Yeah, sure. I think it's good to be aware of it. I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and argue that we shouldn't have more educational, like, contraception and stuff. I do agree that we should try to reduce the overall abortions in society, but not because I think aborting a fetus is a moral wrong that we're trying to minimize, but just because abortion sucks, and there's better ways to prevent people from getting pregnant, I think, or prevent people from
Why does abortion suck? Why does it suck? That's a good point too. I mean, Hitler didn't come up with himself, but also to be fair, those experiments probably wouldn't have happened because they're so fucking horrible. They probably wouldn't have happened without a fucking psychopathic dictator. I don't know if you're trolling, but I don't know, and I don't like it.
Yeah, because I think for me, so I follow like different geopolitical writers, and they say how like at the moment the whole world is, I guess, decreasing in birth rate.
Yeah,
and I think anything we could do to just
yeah, because of the Schmush Martians, not to mention all the liberals are sterilizing their children.
Move the needle in a positive direction. I think the biggest issue people have with people having kids is, like you said, they grow up in a bad environment. But we don't look into what sorts of environments these people are growing up, and what are the factors that lead to that. Is it just their environment, or is it their parents' individual experience?
This is clearly the dumbest person who's come up. And well, we don't really know anything, bro. Totally. It could just be something you don't even understand. Next, please.
Is it economic circumstances?
Yeah, a couple
financial
minutes.
circumstances. So,
Couple minutes of this guy.
Peter Z fan or okay.
I love Peter Zahan.
Okay,
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole separate argument. I don't think the population argument is. There are issues to look at there, but I mean that's a whole other thing. It's not worth getting into.
50-50.
Okay, well I'll give you the last word. What do you think? Yeah.
I just want to say I'm a big fan. I enjoy your Peter Gosden talk, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yay! All right, the final dude.
Joshua, what's up?
We had Yash, and now we have Joshua.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good.
So the topic is I'm pro-choice, change my mind. So how I go about answering this question is that
Oh wait, hold on. Are you pro-choice or you pro-life?
I'm pro-life.
Okay, gotcha. All right, we're doing a pro-lifer. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so how I go about approaching this question is I ask the question, what is human life? Human life. So human life begins or human life is when the soul is united to the body. So you might,
Bro. Just a little advice. There is, you may not be incorrect, no freedoms, but you will not get anywhere in life defending Hitler. Saying Hitler, don't act like Hitler was really that bad of a guy. I would advise you, if that's your opinion, despite the fact that Stalin and Mao, the only two humans ever to exist, or maybe a Genghis Khan, the only other three humans to exist to kill that many people in recent history. Yeah, maybe Hitler wasn't number one, but I'm just telling you, I don't think that's not the hill to die on.
be alarmed by this by saying, oh, I don't believe in a soul. But I think that everyone believes in a soul because all I mean by the word soul is the life principle of a thing. So
The life principle of a thing. He said everybody has a soul. And what I mean by the word soul is there's a life principle of a thing. I'm trying to sit on that for a second. I don't think I really understand what that means. Nope, no clue. Let's see.
when something is alive, its soul is united to the body. So I would argue that like
I need to hear that again.
soul, even a soul, but I think that everyone believes in a soul because all I mean by the word soul is the life principle of a thing. So when something is alive, its soul is united to the body.
When something is alive, its soul is united to the body. But you just said that the soul is the life principle or whatever. I don't really. Yeah, I don't think that I don't get that. Let's let him continue.
I would argue that like grass has a soul, it has a material soul, but humans have immaterial souls. So when the distinct body is formed within.
Hey, we got Mr. Pliskin in the building. Another quote from Tom McDonald. A baby fetus is just a clump of cells, but tiny microbes on Mars. Life? Apparently. Welcome, Pliskin. Welcome. Glad to see you. Glad you are here. Freedom says, look around the world. We had many people kill a lot of people, some more than Hitler. You don't read. I never rewind the tape. When did I say that Hitler killed the most people in history? I listed off 3 people just off the top of my head for people that killed more than him. That's what we call a straw man. Is that you're saying a religious answer for a scientific question? I kind of got thrown for a loop with this one. So let me back this up a little bit. And of course,
Soul, but humans have immaterial souls. So when
one more. Sorry. Fucking play.
So I would argue that like grass has a soul, it has a material soul, but humans have immaterial souls. So when the distinct body is formed within the mother's womb, that would constitute the beginning of life because that's when the soul is united to the body.
Okay.
Did anybody understand anything that this guy just said? Because I didn't. I'm hoping Destiny can rein it in.
So then my question would be is, when is the soul left in the body.
Hey, we got JR in the building. Welcome, buddy. Welcome. We are checking out Destiny's I'm pro-choice. Change my mind.
The soul is left from the body. Well, we can't, since it's an immaterial process, we can't see exactly when the soul leaves the body, but decomposition gives us assurance that the soul has left the body.
You sure about that? Decomposition gives us assurance that the soul has left the body. How? That's just saying things. What about decomposition gives us assurance that the soul has left the body?
Okay, what about, let's say you get a person who's otherwise healthy, but at like 35, 40 years old, they're comatose. They get into a bad accident, they're in a coma. Doctor determines this person's never going to wake up again. And we could probably keep their body alive on machines for 40 or 50 years. Does their body have a soul for that entire 40, 50 extra years? Or
So the soul would probably still be in the body if they're passing urine, if they're doing human processes. But I would argue that your question afterwards would be, are you allowed to kill that person? I would say that you're not murdering that person. You're withholding the necessary means to survive for that person, uh, because it's not possible for the person to live, function
can you
properly.
make the same?
I'm confused by this. No Freedom says, I guess he never seen a spider bite or a snake bite. Is part of their soul dead? I don't. I don't understand the question. Why would what does a snake or spider bite have to do with the soul being dead? Mr. Pliskin says, even if there was only a 1% chance of saving all the people Hitler deleted, I'd still toss baby Hitler off a bridge. All right, bro. Really? Wow. Talk about privilege. Shouts to JR. Some bites can lead to rotting or dying flesh. Oh, so that makes a so then back to the question. So with the notion of rotting or dying flesh is part of the soul dead. So I would, if I were to guess, if I could put words in Joshua's mouth here, he would say no, because the soul isn't the same thing as the body. So it's not like there's a part of soul in your finger, and if you cut your finger off, that part of your soul is gone. Your soul exists within you. Again, speaking for Joshua, your soul is within you, so it just would be packed in to the rest of your body. I guess. I don't know. This motherfucker.
Same argument for like an embryo that's not at the ability to self-sustain outside of the womb, that you're just removing an embryo from the body and then it's not able to self-sustain?
No, you can't make the same argument because it's most definitely a temporary thing, because if the person is allowed to live longer, then it could do these processes. It could pass urine. The soul is still in the body. I mean, the person still would have a human dignity. I'm arguing. But in that case, that's actually murdering the person.
So unplugging a comatose person from a machine isn't murder, but
Yeah, murder is a legal term. So it's not murder. It is ending a life, but it is not murder.
taking a fetus out of the body would be murder.
No, the person, and then the other is letting die.
Oh, couldn't you just take the embryo out and then let it die?
No,
I'm so lost. I am so lost. What the fuck are they talking about?
so in certain cases where there are like there's question of whether or not the mother or the child can survive.
Well, like let's say like you have a fetus that's like 4 months old and you remove it from like the pregnant mother. I mean, if you just leave it, like it'll die on its own. You don't have to.
Same thing with a 1-year-old. If you take a 1-year-old, as Destiny said earlier in this very video, that if you just leave a baby on its own, a baby that has been birthed, a baby that we would all agree is alive, that is a human, that is a person, that has rights, that if you leave it alone, it will die. It still needs somebody to take care of it. it still needs it still needs somebody to make sure that it can survive. So now he's just going back on his own words.
Kill it, right?
Well, I mean, if you remove it in that case, when there's no, when it's just the normal means, it's the normal situation where the person
What is
could
a normal
be
situation?
let live, continue living. That's actually killing them because the person could grow up to be the person that you do these things.
Isn't there a difference between like a person that is grown up and a
Why would he put this guy at the end of the video?
person that could grow up? Like I hear a lot of people argue about like the potential for life, but there's a difference between like a life itself and the potential for life. No,
No, that's what I said at the start. So what constitutes? So I heard earlier that you said that the thing that constitutes life is consciousness. I would dispute this by saying that the definition of consciousness, I looked it up, is that you're aware of your surroundings. We don't fall. Our dignity as humans don't fall in and out as we sleep, or if we have disabilities where we're not actually conscious of our aware of our surroundings.
That's a fantastic point. You're not conscious when you're asleep. Does that mean it's okay to kill people who are asleep? Depends on your definition of consciousness. It depends on your definition of life. According to Joshua's definition of consciousness and Destiny's definition of life, I guess it's okay.
So I would argue that what determines a thing's dignity is not what it can do, but primarily what it is. It's the reality. It's not what it can do or what is it doing.
well, yeah, but I guess I'm looking at like what kind of fetus do?
What can a fetus do?
Like it can't do anything. It's gotta wait, right?
Well, that's not what I'm. Well,
What does that have to do with anything? What can a 1-year-old do? Again, you're making the same argument to murder a 1-year-old child because it's not viable on its own. It can't do anything. It doesn't have memories. It has consciousness in the most basic form where there is an experience, but there's no memory. There's no. So what exactly is your position, Destiny?
that's exactly what I said. I said that what it is determines its dignity rather than what it can do.
Yeah, but I guess
or
so. What it? Okay, well then, what is a fetus that determines it should have dignity?
Well,
A
it's
human!
unique and unrepeatable, a distinct relationship with another person. So the reason
No, not a relationship with another person, Joshua. Come on, you were right there. You were right there, bro. Unreputable and a distinct set of DNA. It has nothing to do with relationships to this people and that these people or those people. It's the fact that is unique DNA. Ending unique DNA is ending life. If I cut off my finger, my DNA still exists. Just like if I pull out a hair, there's my DNA in here. But it's not only in here. I don't know why this is so confusing for so many people. Freedom says, we pick and choose what to believe and fight for. Well, that I definitely agree on. And that's exactly why I think it's so important that we know what's going on and what we think about these things and what the arguments are so that we pick and choose the right things to believe and fight for. Nah, I mean... Struggle streaming, just start the fucking
why I'm a
video.
human person and you're a human person is because we have different parents and we have different relationships with those said parents.
Yeah, but I'd argue it's like probably the conscious experience that we deploy is what makes us who we are, right? It's not just my body. It's that I have thoughts about ideas and things that have happened in the past. I've got like a way to relate to you with language and
None of those things do you have at 1 year old.
sophisticated understanding of our surroundings. Like all of these things are part of like what it means to be a human. Like all are part of like experiencing humanity.
Please, somebody fucking talk about a 1-year-old baby. None of those things are relevant. I don't know. I'm getting frustrated.
Yeah, that is a part of the experience of humanity, but it's not inherent to the experience of humanity. There are things like there are, as what I said, we don't jump out of our dignity doesn't jump out of being because we fall asleep.
No, but like somebody who's sleeping still has the capacity to deploy consciousness. Like I can wake them up, and they're like, "Oh, I'm awake." And
Well,
Yeah, you could, let the So his argument is that you can't kill a sleeping person because you could add a process to bring them back to consciousness. But a fetus, you don't even have to do anything, and they will not return to consciousness, but develop consciousness. This argument just falls on its face at every turn. At every turn, everything that he's trying to, and he pretty accurately represents, I would say, the pro-life position. I mean, most pro-choice, most pro-choice liberal women are just like, my body, my choice, that's it. No, you're a man, you don't get to decide. And that's the extent of their argument. He at least is engaging with the philosophical aspect of consciousness and life and all that stuff. But he's just wrong, in my opinion. Mr. Pliskin says, at 1 year old, you're one of the most innocently vulnerable individuals imaginable and should be protected at all costs, in my opinion. So at 1 year old, you're one of the most innocently vulnerable individuals. What does that make a fetus? And Freedoms asks why. If it's old enough to pick his... Oh, come on, you fucking... Yeah, moron.
that's the same for
can't wake a fetus up.
You can wait 6 months and wait.
That's not
waiting. He said you can't wake a fetus up. He said, yeah, but you can wait 6 months. Oh, got him.
Wait, because the capacity isn't even there. They're like, if you go to sleep.
What do you mean the capacity isn't even there? We were all a fetus at one time. And now we're all conscious. So I would argue that, yes, sir, the capacity is there.
I like, even if you're sleeping, there is something, what it is like to be you. Like, you've had that experience, you're there, and it can be woken up and deployed again. But for a fetus, it's like 2 weeks old. It doesn't even have an experience of what it's like to be itself. Like,
so again, we're now saying that if you don't have an experience of what it is to be yourself, then you don't have value. What about people with amnesia? He's all talking about the person in the coma, right? Well, very often when you're in a coma, you wake up and you don't remember shit. You don't have the experience of being yourself. You don't have memories of that. You start, but what exactly? That's the argument that he's making, or it's not the argument that he's making, but that's where his logic ends up. It's, oh man, it's bad.
when if you were to kill it, like nothing has been. It's not like there was an experience and now it's gone, or you had a life and you ended it. There wasn't ever anything like an experience there to begin with to speak of. I think it's fundamentally different than like waking somebody up from sleep that already was experiencing and then went to sleep and then can deploy their consciousness again by being woken up.
That's just cope.
So the main problem with the argument is that when we add in like this time or like time understanding, it solves like what you're saying. Like if we add in, if we wait for a certain amount of time, the fetus could have these experiences of consciousness.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
What determines?
There's no process. There's only time. Waking somebody up is a process. The process of creating a fetus is already done once it's a fetus. So if you think, oh, I could wake somebody up and they're conscious again. Or you could do nothing with the fetus and it will turn conscious.
And when does it determine that it has its consciousness, and how can we know? So that
exactly. Yes, I think at around.
Which again comes back to the original argument that if you use consciousness as the beginning of life, you are now using something arbitrary, because not only do we not exactly know what consciousness is, but we certainly don't know when whatever that version of consciousness that we would consider giving that grants personhood. We don't know when that starts. So then when is it okay to have the procedure?
20 to 24 weeks is when the necessary parts of the brain have developed and started communicating.
According to you. What about some people say the heartbeat? Some people, some people say the heartbeat, and that's at like, it's not at like 6 weeks or something, 12 weeks, something like that. Let's look her up. When does a fetus have a heartbeat? 3 weeks. Oh, Jesus. 3 weeks after conception. You don't even know that you're pregnant 3 weeks after conception. Wait. Okay, so that's 5 weeks into pregnancy. 5 weeks into pregnancy, 3 weeks after conception. But yeah, at that point, you don't even know. You may not know that you're even pregnant. And that's not, something I'm just pulling out of my ass. A lot of people say the heartbeat. A lot of people who were previously pro-choice, who ended up having kids, said that the moment they heard their child's heartbeat, it just flipped the switch in their mind. I don't have kids. I have never had that experience. But it makes a lot of sense. That's a good question. That's a good question. I have no fucking clue. I assume it has something to do with hormones. Really? This is... We went to look up how do pregnancy tests work. And this is the kind of videos that we're getting. We got birth control pills. We got, what do you need to know about oral contraceptive? How do subscription pills work? More about birth control. Birth control. Birth control. Birth control. Birth control. Oh, that's why. Okay. My bad. I was about to be like, yo, this is crazy. Okay. Boom. Let's try take two. Take two. What's the shortest one? This one's 3:14. 3:14. Okay. How does a pregnancy test work? I hope this doesn't get my shit blocked.
Pregnancy tests, whether done at home or in a lab, detect a substance called HCG, which stands for human chorionic gonadotropin. This is found in the blood and urine of pregnant women and is normally produced by reproductive tissues at very high levels in the first 3 to 4 months of pregnancy. HCG is a hormone, and one of its purposes is to signal other parts of the body to do the things needed to sustain pregnancy. It can be detected early on in the pregnancy, so it is a suitable surrogate for figuring out whether someone may be pregnant. But how does a pregnancy test kit work? Home pregnancy kits are a type of lateral flow device, which means that when you apply a liquid, in this case urine, it flows sideways across the absorbent pad where it
She peed on it.
interacts with different reagents. Some of these reagents are attached to specific locations on the pad, so they line up with the spots for the control reaction and the test reaction. The whole process depends on HCG connecting to or binding to large molecules called antibodies, which were originally produced and collected from animal immune systems. Antibodies are selected which specifically bind to...
I'm just going to pause this to make sure if there's any kind of bullshit that this is educational and in fair use. Thank you, Mr. Pliskin. Fair use.
HCG, and the antibodies can also be labeled with something that we can see, like colored particles, or a substance called colloidal gold. So, when the HCG in urine encounters an antibody, the two molecules will bind and continue to move down the pad until they encounter another antibody that binds to a different spot on HCG. The second antibody is attached to the test or T line, and when this binding happens, it holds the HCG and the visible antibody in place. This is referred to as forming a sandwich.
It's called forming a sandwich. A sandwich. When she gets
This happens with millions of HCG molecules.
Can you still hear? Hold on. Can you still hear?
And antibodies. The color accumulates and forms a visible line. But what about?
God damn it! Fuck, I gotta check out Streamlabs and see what's good with that, because I don't know why. Just randomly it will stop. Can you? Yeah, okay. I didn't mute myself, motherfucker. StreamYard lost connection or whatever, and it muted me. So fuck you.
What about the other line? The control line? Is that important? You bet it is. Some of the labeled antibody will get past the T line and keep going. When it encounters another antibody at the C line, this anchored antibody binds to some part of the moving labeled antibody, forming the C line. This tells you that the reaction.
All right, I'm bored. Basically, there's chemicals in the woman's piss, and they can tell from that. All right, let's back this up a little bit, see exactly where we were.
And fetus could have these experiences of consciousness.
Yeah.
So what determines, and when does it determine that it has this consciousness, and how can we know so that we can?
Yeah, so I think at around 20 to 24 weeks is when the necessary parts of the brain are developed and started communicating that there's like a conscious experience.
So 20 to 24 weeks. How can we assign a scientific determination that determines this specific individual is a human or is not a human?
Well, it's not.
Boom! Finally, somebody asking the right question. How do we determine that this thing either has consciousness and is a human, or does not have consciousness and is not yet a human, but will be if you leave it the fuck alone? No. Why the fuck would I eat my dog? You're weird, bro.
It's not about a human or not a human. It's whether or not they have like.
Is it though? Isn't it though? Isn't it though? That's exactly what it's about, Destiny. Well, it's not about whether it's a human or not a human. That is exactly the argument. That is exactly what the argument is. Is it a human, or is it just a clump of cells?
An experience worth like protecting. Like a human corpse is like a human, but it's
Okay.
like there's no conscious experience, so there's not going to be one anymore. So like it's.
I also have like a problem with like this idea of like consciousness, because I think you're like, I would need you to define what you mean by consciousness, because it seems to me that the way you're defining consciousness is having experiences with other people, but I think that like from the first moment you exist, you have experiences with other people because you have a unique relationship with that other person. Like you're a human, a distinct
DNA! Distinct DNA, guys! Come on!
human person that has a distinct DNA from
There
your
you
parents.
go!
You went from not existing to existing.
Yeah, I know, but when I talk about consciousness, I'm talking about. Try to put it.
I'm talking about the thing that I need to define in order to make my political narrative fit with the reality that actually doesn't comport with the reality of what I'm talking about. Gotcha.
Exactly into words, but it seems like there is there's an experience where we know what it's like to be a human, and we have like past memories. We've got an understanding of our environment, our surroundings. I think there's like, you can probably find more complicated write-ups like what are all like the necessary components of human consciousness, but there's like an experience of what it is like to be a human, and that's something that we're having I assume we're all having it as we go about like our day-to-day lives.
Do
And
people that are disabled have this consciousness you speak of?
depends on the level of disability. I think 99% of the time, yes, but like in extremely rare cases, like hydroencephalitis, or I think where like half of your brain is like water and you only have like a brainstem, probably not. But like most disabled people are still having like all the parts of their brain communicating to have like a conscious experience. Like the vast majority of them are.
Okay, it would be better if I gave examples and asked you for each individual one.
Go for it, bro. Come on,
Trying to
Josh.
find a way to continue the conversation.
Well, there's like, did you ever hear about that? There was a kid that lived in the UK. Who
Josh was just like, "Yo, I mean, like, you're kind of stupid. I don't think you really get where I'm coming from. Like, you get anything else?"
had, I think, a severe case of hydroencephalitis, I think, and they were trying to ship him to France.
Oh, I didn't do this earlier, but whoever is drinking, happy Friday night! It's the motherfucking weekend. Cheers. I mean, I do work Saturdays, but I just got one client. We're going to a nearby park. It's gonna be fun.
For medical treatment, and the government decided not to. Are you familiar with this case?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Oh,
so,
gotcha. But they wanted to ship him over to France for treatment. The parents did, and the government said no. And the argument ultimately became that, like, when you do brain scans of the child, like 90% of the brain was like water mush. There was nothing. There was like no brain there. There was a brain stem, and the brain stem is capable of producing very basic responses. Like if you shine a light, pupils will dilate and undilate, and it can kind of respond to like external stimuli. But like it's like a very basic, like you program like a robot to do some basic responses, and that's it. There's probably not like the human conscious experience there.
So, again, I want to push for my definition, to prefer my definition of like when human life begins, because the question is, when does human life begin? Human life begins when the soul is united, at first united to the body, where the life principle that is. So, when does life begin? When the thing is alive. So, like,
hey, we got Miguel in the building. Welcome, buddy. Welcome. You have arrived at one of very few parties where I am still going to drop the link, which I just did. I just dropped the link for the panel. It's going to be pinned at the top of the chat. I am very excited to hear from you guys. Please just, when we're talking about Smash Martian, either call it that or the procedure or whatever, I would very much appreciate if you could cam up, and that would make me much more comfortable and much more likely to do this in the future. But I do understand if you can't. But like I said, you should. You should. And you know what? I'm still going to hit up Discord when we're done with this. So make sure you hit the link in the description to be in the Discord. We can get the real conversation. We don't have to dance around any words. We can say exactly what the fuck we want to say.
How we determine the way we interact with things is based on what it is. I'd like to know, what is a fetus before 20 weeks or whatever.
Great question.
It's a human fetus, I guess, right?
Exactly. So killing a human fetus is killing a human, is it not?
A human fetus? It's a living thing, but it's just not anything that I would deem worthy of like protection or respect or anything. It's just like a human fetus. Given enough time to develop, it'll grow into something that's worthy of like respect or dignity or moral consideration. But before that,
again, then I have to ask, okay, so what is the process? What is the difference that allows a 1 second old baby all of these rights over a fetus which will be born in 1 second? Because that's really, if you're saying that birth is the dividing line, then you're saying there's some immutable difference that makes something a human at the moment of birth. And even if that's your position, what is the moment of birth? Bitch be in labor for fucking 20 hours. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's all cope. Mike says, if you kill someone that wasn't conscious, you would go to jail for murder. Yeah. And now I definitely, No Freedom says, I'm tired of people comparing things to robots, but don't know shit how they work. Babies are not robots. I agree with that. I didn't know a lot of people were comparing things to robots, and I guess I don't know too much about robotics either, but I'm with you on the second part. Yeah, this was the point we were bringing up before about if you're asleep. And he's like, well, I could wake you up. But if you don't wake me up, theoretically, I could die in my sleep. So what would be the difference in your mind from doing the procedure and killing somebody who's sleeping? I don't get it. Miguel brings up another fantastic point, that a lot of us are cut out of the mother. So maybe I wasn't born. So I mean, born is again a more just a term of, coming into the world. So absolutely, you were born. I think I was a C-section as well. But that's when you're born. But again, that comes back to my question of, okay, if we're saying birth is the start of life, then where do we draw that line? When your head starts through the birth canal, When your head's out of the birth canal? When your whole body's out of the birth canal? What about the umbilical cord? What about the placenta? Does that count? Like what? These are all arbitrary lines to draw. The only rational line is conception. I'm an atheist ex-liberal, and that's it. You have to go with what makes sense. There is no other place to draw that line. Freedom says, I wonder how he feels about China's one-child policy. Yeah, I'd be very interested to ask, and how that relates to his position on the procedure. Like says, if the woman wants the baby, it's if the woman wants the baby, it's life. If she doesn't, it's just a clump of cells. I think in most states, if you kill a pregnant woman, you get charged with 2 counts of murder. Why is that? Why would a pregnant person being murdered result in 2 counts of murder? Because it's just a clump of cells. It's like they had a mole on their arm. Right?
Then it's not.
Okay, well, why would you push against my definition of human life beginning when the soul is united to the body?
One, because I don't know what a soul is and I can't define a soul.
Okay, a
anyway.
life principle when it's alive.
Because
Human
I think
life
there's plenty of
begins
alive
because
things that like
something-
what's it like I could cut a finger off and like pump blood through it and preserve it for a long period of time. That's a living human thing. But like
Yes, because you are a living human thing. Your finger is not separate from you. Even if it is physically separate from you, it is still your finger. It's still your DNA.
there's no conscious experience there. Like I don't care about that.
That doesn't have distinct human DNA from you. It doesn't
Well,
have
twins don't have
relation.
distinct human DNA. I don't think just
Yes, they do! What? Twins do not have identical DNA. Do they? Is it identical? I don't think it's I mean, maybe it is. Do identical... Make sure I got the right fucking question this time. Identical twins share the same genomes and are always the same sex. In contrast, this study of 381 pairs of identical twins and 2 sets of identical triplets found that only 38, that's 10%, only 38 were genetically identical. Most just had a few points of genetic mismatch, but 39 had more than 100 differences in their DNA. This is from the Smithsonian. So I'm gonna drop this link in the chat if you want to check it out on your own. But in a new study of over 300 pairs of identical twins, only 38 had perfectly identical DNA. So, sorry, Destiny. Once again, you are incorrect.
distinct human DNA like means anything, right? Like twins have identical human DNA. Theoretically, they could.
But the problem with that argument is that when I'm
Come on, I don't expect him to know this because I didn't know this, but like, yeah, identical twins don't have the same fingerprints because only 10% of the time do they have the exact same DNA. And I would assume, I don't know, but if they are part of that 10% that share identical genome portfolio, you know what I mean? If their DNA is exactly the same, maybe they would have the same fingerprints. But now Destiny is just talking shit, just saying things.
saying the words DNA, I'm putting biological terms to it, but a distinct relationship, a unique and unrepeatable relationship with another person is what determines personhood.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's a perfect way to get around the semantics of whether or not twins have the same DNA, because again, that's an anomaly. Twins are an anomaly. Hey, we got per usual in the building. What is up? Guys, you voted for the panel, and I dropped the link, and nobody's here. Why'd you vote for the panel if you weren't going to come up?
That's the main reason why I would push for like a human person starts when it is conceived, because it has a distinct relationship with the two parents. That's the reason why I'm a distinct person from you.
Well, the reason why you're a distinct person from me is because you're having a conscious experience and we're able to communicate right now, I think, right?
No, it's because you have different DNA, and because you have different DNA, you are having a different conscious experience, not the other way around.
Right?
Okay, well, you have to give reasons for why you should prefer that definition.
Well, yeah, the reason is because I think that's literally what makes us human. In every other case of like human interaction, the conscious experience is literally the thing that we value. It's how we determine when a person is dead, for instance, is when the conscious experience is gone and it's not going to come back.
So I would dispute from that, but that's a different discussion. But like the
There you
example
go.
that you gave is like running blood through a finger.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's a difference because we don't
Your
have a
DNA.
relationship with the finger. We don't have a
you
unique
could,
relationship
depending on.
with the finger.
Now he's just being a fucking. Well, you could. I mean, some people like to fuck their finger.
Not as a person.
You can have a unique, well, as a person, meaning somebody that can
Come
deploy
on.
consciousness, or
No. So
what does as a person means?
a unique and unrepeatable relationship with
Guys, there's 2 minutes left in this video. If nobody comes up on the panel, I was willing to keep going with the other video. You guys voted for the panel, so if nobody comes up, the show's over.
something that has a like.
Yeah, but how do you have a unique and unrepeatable relationship? Like anything, like a rock or
D
my car could have a unique and unrepeatable
N
relationship with me. But like, what's the difference between a car or a rock and a person?
DNA.
Like, what makes that relationship with people so special?
DNA.
Well, I would argue one DNA. Not when I'm saying the terms DNA, you bring up the identical twin thing. Obviously, those are two different persons because there are distinct relationships with those two people have a distinct relationship with their parents. But when I say the term DNA,
Which actually, even though he's not aware, as we weren't, he's not aware that only 10% of identical twins share exactly the same DNA profile. Based on Destiny's description of relationships and personhood and the experience, and they do have different experiences. So again, I don't understand what point he's trying to make with that.
it's more of a philosophical question of what a relationship with a person is. Like,
yeah, but what I'm curious is what makes, and I'll give you the final word on this because I think I have to take off pretty soon.
Go.
But
all right, I guess the
when you're
show's
talking
over.
about unique relationships
Meet me in
with persons,
Discord.
you're talking about DNA.
Nobody's coming
feels
up
to
on the
me
panel.
like you're using this as a proxy for something important. Like what is a person or a DNA?
Yeah, a proxy for something important. You know, it's not like a human is anything important. So it's a proxy for something else that's important. Because, you know, again, a human is not something to be valued. Certainly not in the womb.
DNA that's different from like a table or a microphone or a bottle of water. Like what is that thing that's making it more unique and unrepeatable? Like what is the thing that you're valuing so much there?
DNA.
you can get the last word after that, but
Okay.
after this, but the thing that makes it distinct is because it's a human thing that's living. It's growing, so it's a human thing that's growing. It's distinct from the female's body because it has its own body and genetic makeup. It has distinct parents, so it's a distinct thing from the woman. So because it has a different DNA and what it is a human, it has a different relationship to the other humans around it. So it's a human person. It's a distinct human person that's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And another way we call distinct human organisms is a human being that is deserving of rights.
Okay, I agree with all of that. I just think the thing that makes it a distinct human person's alive is the conscious experience, is what I would say. But
yeah,
well, you'd be wrong. Gail says, thank you for showing up, brother. I really appreciate it. So we've been going for 2.5 hours, and nobody has come up, even though you guys voted for that. And I'm not done yet. So I am going to make the executive decision and we are going to check out one of the student conversations in Destiny's other Change My Mind. Since y'all be bitches. And sometimes I just want a little pretty lady on the screen. So I mean, she's not banging, but I ain't mad at it. So I'll just watch her, and then anybody who wants to meet me in Discord, I'll be in Discord. So this is wokeness, as you can see up here. Wokeness has gone too far. Change my mind. Are you fucking serious? Oh, I'm dumb. It was working. I muted it because I was talking while it started. Thank you, Tyler. Take two.
Obviously, wokeness has gone too far because progressives are really bad at engaging other people in conversation topics. I think that there's way too much of a ideological orthodoxy that's enforced around any area that progressives get their hands on. Go.
Okay, so I'm less interested in making any sort of, I guess, positive argument. I'm just going to say that I think you're basically the one putting forward the positive argument that this has gone too far. I'm not even going to make any prescriptions as to that. I'm just going to say I think that premise is entirely false.
That was a really long way to just say a lot of words without saying anything. What's on the screen right now? The premise is entirely false. That's all you need to say. Well, I'm not giving any prescriptions, and I just wanted to say, but.
And the biggest problem that I have with this conversation is that can you concretely define what you mean by wokeness?
Yeah, so I think that progressives, through a lot of arguments surrounding, have you ever heard of the paradox of tolerance?
Yes, that if you're too tolerant of intolerance, you're going to create a society like Nazi Germany because you're going to let it be overrun by people who would take advantage of that.
Exactly.
Or, for no freedoms, since Hitler, according to No Freedoms, is not so bad, maybe we want to talk about Stalin. Because, according to No Freedoms, Hitler, according to No Freedoms, you're not clipping me up. It's just, he's not that bad. Pastel said, bro, I really want to talk about conscious. Motherfucker, I dropped the link fucking 10 minutes ago. Jesus Christ. Actually, you know what? You can wait. We'll talk about it in Discord.
That through that argument of the paradox of tolerance, progressives have essentially created the system that allows them to get rid of all dissenting opinion, because the dissenting opinions themselves represent a threat to discourse or democracy or woke values or whatever.
Okay,
that's the specific thing I'm kind of pointing at.
Okay, can you give me an example of wokeness run amok that you think is problematic, or if it were to become a broader social trend, would be some sort of social contagion?
Yeah, so sure. So
oh, she said social contagion. How can you know what the fuck a social contagion is and not know that changing your gender is a social contagion? The only reason that phrase social contagion has become relevant is because of all this gender bender shit. But let's see where he goes.
Some of the things that I was kind of looking at earlier, so on the macro level, it's the rigid enforcement of progressive values, and if there's any deviation, you get bucked by the system.
Cancel.
Or you get excise or whatever. For micro examples, I would say that Brett Weinstein at Evergreen College was an example of this.
All right. Who does anybody need me to quickly talk about what happened with Brett Weinstein at Evergreen College. I can go through it pretty quickly if you don't know.
Can I stop you? What do you mean by bucked by the system?
So if you're in school, people will try to like cancel you or get you kicked out. If you're like a faculty or administrator, people ask for your resignation or make it hard for you to work. If you're a researcher, people won't want to work with you or publish your stuff like that.
Okay, so like threats to livelihood is
yeah,
what you're
basically,
saying.
yeah. Lots of cultural pressure, lots of social pressure. Sometimes direct like pressure from staff, but lots of social and cultural pressure.
Okay, and then
so like I think Brett Weinstein at like Evergreen College was like a pretty good example of that.
Okay. Why?
Where I think Brett's arguments were, even if you disagreed with them, I think they were entirely reasonable.
What were his arguments?
He felt like, are you familiar with the Evergreen College situation?
Yes, I am, but I'm interested in hearing your characterization of it. So why don't you explain it?
Oh,
Brought it up.
Guys, can I get one more like? If you have not liked, one like will get me over 10. I would really, really appreciate that.
Okay, I learned all about it in the Red Pill community, shit test and everything. So that's
okay,
good.
nice.
Okay,
sounds good. Tell me
okay,
about
yeah. So my understanding was that
So hey, if you didn't know, he's gonna explain it.
traditionally at this school, there were days, or there was like one day a year where I think it was specifically black students would take a step back and let everybody have like a day and see like, well, this is what it's like when minorities are missing, and then they do like a off-campus event or something.
Mhm.
And they wanted to switch it up where they were saying, well, we're going to ask white students to leave, or white faculty or white people to leave college this day for, I don't even know what the justification given there was, but I think Brett sent out an email where
So the justification was a day without minorities was supposed to be where all the minorities at Evergreen College would stay home and skip class and not go to work and then whatever. And so it'd be like, hey, see, without minorities, you wouldn't have this, that, and the other. But Evergreen College in like 2016, 2017, right, where all this wokeness was really bubbling up, they decided, oh, we're going to do it the other way. And so it's not we're going to tell all the white people to stay home to see how good it is when there's no white people here. And so Brett Weinstein was like, hold on. Just like with Jordan Peterson saying, hold on, it's fine for you to want to be called this, that, and the other, whatever your name is. If you tell me that your name is this and that your gender is this, I can choose to placate you. But you can't tell me that I have to say this anything. You cannot compel my speech. And in the same way, at Evergreen College, it's one thing to say, oh, if you're a minority, you are allowed to skip class. You're allowed to take the day off work. Versus, hey, if you're white, you're not welcome here. Those are two very different notions. And so he spoke up about it. He showed up on to work on the day that the white people weren't supposed to be there, and the students were like chasing him down. He had to hide in his car. They were trying to, I don't know, enact some kind of violence. This was also the same event where the president of the college was essentially taken hostage. He was in a class with a bunch of students. They're all yelling at him, and let me see if I can find that. Actually, that would be fun. Evergreen College president. I think it was the president. All right, let's just see what this is.
Front of this crowd, that's biology professor Brett Weinstein, whose class was taken over last month by a group of students from the Evergreen State College.
I was immensely disappointed with the students who obstructed his class.
The president of the college, Dr. George Bridges, says the students responsible could be punished. Weinstein started holding classes at an Olympia park after he was told he wasn't safe on campus. Students were upset and called for Weinstein's resignation because of past criticism of events and proposed policy changes regarding minorities at the college.
Why the is he here?
Protests grew, with President George Bridges becoming
that's what I was talking about. The president George Bridges,
the next target of activists.
Certainly, when we were focusing on racism and free speech, that activism took a turn that we didn't expect. It turned to invective, to fear, and some really intense emotion.
Bridges says he was never fearful and was comfortable talking to students about racial issues.
Stop the cap. I don't know if they're going to show it in this, but there's a point where he's talking and he's, using his hands, and all the students are like, stop doing that. That's a microaggression. It makes us feel unsafe. He's like, okay, I'm sorry. And they all start laughing. I would love to see that part. So Mike says the black students chose not to go to school that day. They wanted to force whites not to. Yeah, that's the difference. For instance, wait, are Americans doing the same thing to Russian people? What?
So he refused to have campus police get involved. But when word of the protest spread across the country and someone called in a threat saying they were going to execute people at Evergreen, Bridges shut down the school for 3 school days and then moved graduation off campus.
We still get some harassment and messages, and we want to ensure that everyone feels perfectly safe so that we can celebrate the accomplishments of our students.
Beta!
The president says protests are part of Evergreen's history. He just hopes those in the future are more productive.
How do we listen to each other? We have freedom of speech often, but are we listening to engage? Are we listening to reject? And I fear that here...
Yeah, because these students are really, really in a position to listen. The young children, the 20-year-old children who have not made it through college are the ones we need to listen to. That's what you're saying. Maybe you shouldn't be president of a school. If that's
some
what you think.
places and everywhere, many are more willing to listen to reject than to understand.
The president says the proposed policy changes that prompted all these protests are still being discussed and debated. He says the school wants to make sure that...
I don't care. I want to see if I can find just the... that little piece. TSP on the road. Hey, let's hop in here.
And then it's going to start getting thick and, you're back in New York City, So I could definitely see why people, when they leave New York City, like, yo, this is the best decision. But I know I can't live in small rural towns. I just can't do it. But yeah, the food was really good at this one particular spot. And, I definitely was trying to get some duck fat fries. So I can feel what it was like to be,
Santoni?
Yeah, Santino, D'Antonio. I wanted to, said the whole Indian Jesus crew watching was goody. Check out Lutch on his channel on YouTube.
Let's see what he's gonna say about me.
Bringing back what he believes is common sense.
This motherfucker.
But yeah, definitely check out what he's doing over there. He's having a lot of heavy conversations over there that require a working brain. But yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, well, for me, I lived in a small town before. It's
all right, so I can't find it. But yeah, that's basically what happened at Evergreen College. So let's back this up a couple seconds, finish this bitch out.
Off-campus event or something. And they wanted to switch it up where they were saying, well, we're going to ask white students to leave, or white faculty, or white people to leave college this day. For, I don't even know what the justification given there was, but I think Brett sent out an email where he was disagreeing. He was saying, like, I think it's a bit different when you're asking white people to leave. I don't agree with this. I don't want to partake in this. And through that email being published and then disseminated to the student body, people got this idea that there were a lot of ideas, but basically people started to show up at his class outside. They were, I don't know if I say threatening him, but they were like screaming at him, shouting at him. They really wanted to fight over him being like racist and stuff like that. And eventually it blew into a thing where, I don't know if he ended up settling with the college before he left or whatever, but he basically left the college because of all the pressure.
Yeah, I know about this, unfortunately, because he has taken himself on a media parade.
Yes.
And will go on to any podcast that will let him rehash the story, even though it literally happened forever ago.
Yep.
How dare he? How dare he speak about his own experiences? That's only for women and liberals. Oh, wait. He is a bleeding fucking liberal. He just happens to be white. White men don't get to speak. You don't get to have an opinion. Well, unless you identify as a woman.
Yep. Do you know what the contents of those emails were that he said in response to his disagreement?
Yes. He said it was unconstitutional and that it was not in the same vein as what letting the black students not come into class was. And it was the teachers and staff as well. So yes, I do. I don't know if Destiny does, but let's see.
To the, like, they free of white people on campus or whatever.
Yeah, we actually, I read
that's racist.
all of them, I think a couple months ago, again, because we wrote it up, but I don't remember, I can't recite it word for word.
Okay, I can't either, but I do remember that what he did say to this organizer was that he would be happy to provide a
A forum for discussion or something, I think, or
Yes, do you know what
How dare he? What? You want to discuss at a university? That is not the place for discussion and learning. That is not the place for nuance and understanding. University is a place for blind conformity. How dare he want to have an open forum or discussion?
the topic is going to be?
what was the topic? I don't remember.
Race and how it coincides with evolutionary.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Well, does anybody know what type of professor Brett Weinstein was? He wasn't an English professor, wasn't a psychology professor, wasn't a fucking gender studies professor.
Okay, so he was basically going to. He was interested in exploring like race realism.
Okay. He's an evolutionary biologist.
Oh, he was an evolutionary biologist. How dare he? We hired you to be a professor on this thing that we call biology. But we don't actually want you to talk about biology. That's racist. Just stay home, Whitey.
An appropriate topic to explore, right?
Right, but given the context of why he's bringing up that he was interested in exploring that subject, when the controversy has to do with, I guess this is about social justice strategies or whatever. Like, what do you think the implication is when he's like, I would be happy to educate people on race realism?
Probably that he would be happy to educate people. I don't think he used the term race realism, but on how race is relevant to evolutionary biology. That's, I mean, what I get from that statement, because, you know, I deal with reality and believe that words have meanings.
I think it's literally perfect. It's within his wheelhouse of what he's educated to do. If you like, one of my biggest frustrations as like an online debater, content creator, is people like me end up getting tasked with debating these like esoteric or very difficult to navigate scientific fields, and nobody from those scientific disciplines will ever enter into any of these discussions to give their opinions. So if somebody that actually has a background in the field wants to like enter into that field and give a discussion on race realism, me personally, I'd rather somebody like, well, I don't know now, but back then, Brett Weinstein talking about race realism and evolutionary psychology, I'd prefer that to like, you know, Nick Fuentes or somebody talking about it.
So Freedom says, I wonder if Hitler had a grandchild that you all knew had a ton of power and riches. Do you believe he should give it to the Jews or say sorry? No. Sins of the father. Unless he was part of any of that, then no. The notion that the only way to fix past discrimination is with present discrimination only results in more discrimination.
It's a pretty low bar to clear. I'd hope that it was maybe a little bit higher, but okay.
Well, I mean...
Wait, what did I miss? Wait, is she like being snarky about, well, an evolutionary biologist is talking about evolutionary biology? Well, I guess that's all about. I think that's what happened, but I want to give her the benefit of the doubt. I want to make sure before I give her shit.
Race realism and evolutionary psychology, I'd prefer that to like, you know, Nick Fuentes or somebody talking about it.
It's a pretty low bar to clear. I'd hope that it was maybe a little bit higher, but okay.
It was an example. It was an example. He didn't say Nick Fuentes was the next best. He used Nick Fuentes as a very obvious example, much like how many people often use Hitler as an obvious example. But like, I gotta, like, all right, I guess, like, oh my god, like,
Well, I mean, Jordan, I prefer him to like Ben Shapiro talking about it, I guess, yeah.
Another low standard. All right.
Yeah, a low standard. Oh, bitch, I would fucking love to see you sit down and have any conversation with Ben Shapiro. And I would love even more to watch you cry as you fucking walk out.
It's conservatives. The standard's not very high, okay? I'm trying to
All right, so...
But I mean, like, do you think that, like, no offense to Brett, or take offense, I don't want Brett to do like a workshop on like, let's talk about like the systemic injustice that appears in society and how we can like alleviate some of the pressures that minorities feel in like America. Like, he's an evolutionary biologist. What is he going to say to that? Like, that's just like a virtue signal. Like, oh, let's like, I brought a slideshow from YouTube.
I know, but like,
Is this a real question? So if Black Lives Matter attacks whites and takes their riches, should their kids give it back? No. The people who attacked should give it back. Why would we wait until they have kids and then not prosecute the people who actually did the crimes and then prosecute their children for crimes that their parents did while their parents are still alive and here? I'm going to assume that you're just being funny or trying. Mike says everyone's a low standard to people she disagrees with. Well, she's the goddess who knows everything about everything. So like I thought it would be like better about like Ben Shapiro. Ugh, like what an idiot.
like I think that there's something in between this huge virtue signal and then ramping it all the way up to.
I know she's not talking about virtue signaling, which is just fucking said that Ben Shapiro is not a high bar in terms of intellect. You may not agree with what Ben Shapiro has to say. Many people do not. There's a lot of things that Ben Shapiro says that I don't agree with. But to act like he is unintelligent is silly. If they are, then we don't. I don't know what that is.
Like, I'd be interested in discussing race realism with you and the idea that there may or may not be superior racial genes, even though that's junk science. To me,
Well, that's junk science, which I know because I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but the evolutionary biologist wanted to have an open forum where he would talk about this. And not even this. She's attributing race realism. She's the one using that term. I don't know 100% for sure, but I'm pretty certain that Brett Weinstein did not say he wanted to have a discussion about race realism. But she knows. She knows. Of course she knows. I mean, look at her glasses.
it's no different than if he had brought up what is it when they like skull shapes?
Phrenology.
If he said, I would be happy to, I'm not happy to participate in this like anti-racism exercise, whether or not it's good is subjective, obviously. And he can have his disagreements with that. But then to follow that up with, but I would be happy to discuss, what did you just say it was?
Phrenology, bitch. He just said it.
Phrenology.
Well, but the phrenology is by definition.
The black students of this.
Yeah, sure. Phrenology is a bunk science, but like, look at where we're at now. Okay, I'm glad you picked this topic because it illustrates my point perfectly.
Okay,
right?
perfect.
We've made a justification for an evolutionary biologist to not talk about evolutionary biology because it's like insensitive.
No, he's free to talk about it, but I'm also free to scrutinize the implication by which, like, why is he demanding it? This is.
I love this woke argument. Like, well, you're free to speak about it, but you're not free from the consequences. And that means that if I decide that the consequences is that I should punch you in the face, that's the consequences. And that's just freedom. Okay, this is America. You're free to do what you want, and I'm free to do what I want. Okay, it's a free country.
Now the time to bring it up.
Well, because people want to have a conversation about like race and stuff, right? So wouldn't this be, if he was ever going to do it, like that would be?
Yes.
I think it's a little bit unfair to characterize it as like, oh, people just want to have a discussion about race. Like,
that's true. They didn't want to have a discussion about race. They wanted to force white people off the campus using social pressure.
Right, and
reasons.
I'm saying I'm not even going to defend that or discuss it or whatever, but I think it, like this.
So you're not even, I'm not even going to defend it or discuss it. I'm not even going to have the conversation that I sat down that you put up this whole thing, set up 2 different cameras and everything, brought the microphones, set everything up, and you wanted to have this conversation, but I don't feel like having that conversation. Okay, Cherie. Oh!
More nuanced than, oh, he wasn't allowed to, he got fired or like whatever.
I don't think he actually got fired. I think he ended up settling with the school and leaving with some payout package. But it was obviously everybody wanted to leave the students.
Exactly.
And I think
a large payout.
The faculty as well.
People think that it starts and ends with like, oh, they, and he talked about this. Like I listened to his interview on Joe Rogan where he said that, he is a Jewish man and he is uncomfortable being told that within.
Who? Are you talking about No Freedom? Are you talking about Brett or are you talking about Destiny?
A country that he wants to live in, there are spaces that he is not welcome in because it's happened historically to Jewish people, which is a completely defensible point. What is indefensible to me and what he conveniently leaves out is not only did he voice his disagreement, which is completely fine. We can argue and disagree about like which strategies about anti-racism and social justice are best and appropriate.
If you say anti-racism and social justice in the same sentence, unironically, we're probably not going to get along.
The umbrage I thought people
I do not know.
were taking up with him.
I wouldn't be surprised though. I mean, as a lefty, he is not. This is why I continue to watch his stuff. And unfortunately, I spend a lot of the day watching some Twitch streamer drama from him, which I wish I can get that time back. But that's why I continue to watch him, because even though I disagree with so much of what he says, he is a smart guy, and he knows how to back up his opinions to a much greater degree than most people who hold those same opinions. And so if this is his opinion, I would not be surprised.
Was that he was saying, oh, but I would be happy to give a lecture on race realism, which is essentially the new version of...
But hold on, what did you think he was going to say? Was he going to say, like, welcome, today we're going to study the warrior gene and why black people are predisposed? Like, did you really think that was going to be like his presentation? Like, we don't even know what the presentation would have been.
Exactly!
I know, it would have been very interesting to hear all about...
But we never got to hear it.
Race
exactly!
Realism.
Well, there are things you can talk about for, like, I'm sure as an evolutionary biologist, you'd have something to say.
But do you
maybe his whole
honestly
presentation...
think that he was sad that he didn't get to give that presentation? Do you think that he was really making that offer to give that lecture? Because
it sounded like...
See, this is again, fucking, I get this shit all the fucking time. He said he is willing to have an open forum. What do you have? What information do you have? What relationship with him do you have that you can determine that he was saying so without actually meaning it? I'm willing to hear it. If you took one of his classes and he talked about something before, and then it turned out to be some super racist, okay, fine. But what is it that you have? No, whatever. That is bringing you to the conclusion to question the man's explicit words. Destiny is low bar. He's really not. He's really not. There's a difference between people who have different opinions and people not being smart. I know you said JK, but Miguel said, don't do a study on IQ by race, but maybe we could do a penis size study. Oh, I'm sure she would have no problem with that. She would love to see that. Freem says, wait, so when we have men saying women are weaker and not as smart as men, we fire them as well. What? Where did that come from?
Like the offer would have been that, like, if you want to have a day where we discuss issues that are relevant to minorities, here's an issue that I can discuss that's relevant to my particular scientific discipline, which I think is what would make the most sense.
The study of how they're inferior to white genes.
How do you know that's what he was going to say? Maybe he's going to say black people were superior.
Yeah, maybe he was. Maybe we were deprived of...
Yeah, maybe he was. Like, totally. I'm actually arguing in good faith right now. Like, I'm not just being a fucking bitch.
An excellent lecture where he made that exact point.
Regardless, it's a college campus. Isn't this like where those types of conversations should be happening with an...
Yes, that is where those conversations, if anywhere, should be happening.
Actual evolutionary biologist rather than like whatever your local conservative group is or your local YouTuber.
I agree with that entirely, but
well, then what's the problem? Then what do you disagree
with?
Do
you though?
My disagreement is that doesn't meet the threshold to say that it's gone out of control. What you just went on to describe, you know.
No, that would be one example. But it's grains of sand that make the heap. So I think that's one quite strong example. We could go down the list, honey, sweetie, baby girl. But that would not look good for you. Not at all.
You know, in excessive detail because he will not ever stop, like, telling the story.
Well, I described it because
why would he? He got fired, or not fired, but he lost his career because the school was racist against him. This is all he has now. I don't get people. I don't understand how people think this way.
You asked me for one example. That's one example. We go through plenty others if you want.
I know.
That was the only thing, but
I think you and your audience know all too well that anecdotes, you know, like data is not just the plural. Like,
sure.
Yes, you know.
Okay, Anna Rude.
Yeah, data's not the plural of anecdote. I understand, but when you
Right.
start to get like story after story after story after story,
Is that story
some
after
of which
story, though?
it is story after story.
Isn't it though? Isn't it though? It absolutely is story after story.
Story.
Oh.
So, like, one of the most recent really troubling ones, I'll do this last one and then we'll let the other guy jump on, and I'll let you respond to this. One of the most recent troubling ones to me, very troubling, very upsetting, was there was a study that was promoted, I think it was conducted at and then promoted by the University of Washington, and this was a study showing that puberty blockers were incredibly beneficial to minors when they were prescribed, and they checked for suicidality after the fact.
Okay.
And when they did this study, the university was shouting it from the rooftops, this is so great, we're helping trans kids, puberty blockers are amazing. People went back and they dug through the study and like, okay, well, when you actually look at it, it's actually a wash. It doesn't really help suicidality much at all. Like, it's like
You got Lefty King over here saying it's a wash. But don't listen to him. Listen to the gender-affirming therapists whose job depends on sterilizing your children. They know better.
Like a hormone wash?
Stop. No, it doesn't help much at all. Okay, we're not doing that.
Okay.
But when the university found this out, when they were internal emails got leaked when this was brought up, and they were like, okay, well, actually, it looks like this wasn't true at all, but we're not going to really talk about it publicly because people were so happy with the last headlines. It would be kind of shitty to announce now that it didn't actually do much at all. This was like not verbatim, but this is more or less what the contents of the email were.
Okay.
And it's like, holy shit, well, now we're actually talking about like scientific literature being published and promoted, and now we're talking about picking and choosing which scientific literature we want to promote based on the social agenda that it promotes. That's really scary to me.
Yeah, like, it's almost like if we had like a worldwide pandemic, that like wokeness would be injected into the science and politics of just how to stay alive. Nah, that wouldn't happen. That couldn't happen. It would have to be the droplets.
And there are more anecdotes, but go for it. I'll let you respond to that one.
Okay, like, I'm not even going to disagree that, like, you can throw these anecdotes at me all day, but they will always just be that. They will just be anecdotes. Like, are we actually seeing a meaningful trend? And I mean...
What is a meaningful trend except... What is a meaningful trend except for a collection of examples that follow the same trend, the same story, the same whatever? What do you think a meaningful trend means? They don't want us to listen to the science. They want us to listen to the scientists. Mike with the fucking bores.
Beyond the scope of individual people having their livelihoods disrupted, losing their income or whatever. Honestly, for the most part, I would disagree, or like I would agree with you that like in each like discrete example that you're going to bring up.
So then what the fuck are you arguing about?
There were inappropriate measures that were taken to HR to get them removed from some campus where somebody should have been able to speak where they weren't able to. But I'm saying, can you see this borne out in any sort of meaningful policy that's been instituted at even at a municipal level or possibly state or federal? And I just don't think it's ever met that threshold. And I think that alone kind of negates your entire premise that it's gone too far, because we would see it happening in Congress, happening in state.
We do. The fact that you're not paying attention, so you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not happening. I'll say that again, honey. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Particularly if you're specifically trying to put blinders on, which I'm just going to take a wild guess and say that this is exactly what it is. Oh, now the fucking Nightbot works.
Legislatures happening, you know, well, Congress is federal, or at the Supreme Court, that because wokeness has gone amok, you know, we must make these corrective policy measures that could potentially, you know, do more harm than good. And I guess that's mostly what I'm worried about, like the policy implications of saying that, like, okay, even if wokeness has gone too far, fine, like for the sake.
That's the argument. That's the whole thing. She's still sitting here for another 10 minutes. She already... whatever.
Sake of the argument, I'll concede, like, it has gone too far. Like, what do we do about it?
Cut the bother. So, okay. Oh, did you ask me what do I do? Oh, I said I give you less credit. Well, I understand that it's not there, like, in policy positions.
He said, what is it? What? Did y'all hear that? That was weird.
Sake of the argument, I'll concede, like, it has gone too far. Like, what do we do about it?
Cut the bother. So, okay. Oh, did you ask me what do I do? Oh, I said I give you less credit.
What the fuck does that mean? Cut the mother?
Well, I understand that it's not there, like, in policy positions, but in schools and in the response to what's happening in schools, it does seem to be there. Now, for whatever reason, progressives are really bad at getting people elected and getting their will enacted in Congress, but I think across, like, college campuses, like, when you look at, like, man, what was the last place? Like, the ideological leanings of, like, professors and stuff, it's, like, in, like, 85% left.
I think it's more than that. I think it's 95.
And, like, even some of the econ departments, I don't know if it's true here for University of Texas.
But is that a problem?
Yes. Yes. That is absolutely a problem. If you go to college to get a myriad of perspectives and you only get one, you are wasting your money. So yes, that is a problem, hon.
Should we be hiring professors based off of their partisan affiliation?
Ooh, but I'm sure she would be so in favor of representation. We need to make sure there's enough women in Hollywood. We need to make sure there's enough gays in movies. And it's crazy how these people have no ability to be consistent with anything. It's like, pick anything, and they're hypocritical. I'm blown away. I'm blown away.
University of Texas.
But is that a problem? Should we be hiring professors based off of their partisan affiliation? Shouldn't it be based off their expertise in the subject, how well they are at lecturing?
Yeah, it should be, but you just told me that somebody with the expertise in evolution or biology couldn't talk about it because it was racially insensitive.
No, I didn't. He was fine to talk about it, but I was saying it's interesting also to explore the implication of why he decided that was the appropriate moment to give that particular
No,
lecture.
I understand, but I'm saying, like, when I'm not saying we should hire people based on their ideological proclivities.
Sounded like it.
No, it didn't. You just heard that because you wanted to hear that.
Okay.
But if
wait, I didn't hear what I didn't hear. So Miguel says the politics of a journalist and a professor should be a mystery to you. I think it may have been in the past, maybe. I don't necessarily agree. I think it's perfectly fine and probably even better for a professor to be upfront about their own political leanings. Because what we see now is that the liberal mindset, because it's not identified as such, has become the default. And that's why the Overton window has shifted so far. Because this super woke fucking LGBT everything is not being acknowledged of, hey, this is what I think. And this is not necessarily what everybody thinks. It's just presented as the truth, and it's presented as normal. How can you even read that? I can't read. Oh, I guess these things. Oh my God, she's so hot. I can't even read what it says. But yeah, I don't find that to be an issue. I think in the past, maybe professors and journalists were able to put their bias aside, so you didn't need to know. But at this stage in the game, people can't put their bias aside. So if they're going to have a bias, I would like to know about it. Not only would I like to know about it, I would like other people to know about it. Oh, the comment section. Got you. Nafreem says to Miguel, it does not matter. I went to college and was afraid by the students. I could tell the students would eat me alive if I said something wrong. I don't know what the rest says.
you're getting this huge slant in a certain direction. The question is, like, well, are all
Well, how do you know that that partisan slant?
The question is, are all of these people, do they just happen to be left-leaning, or is there like a culture that's kind of developing that encourages only left-leaning people to participate, or people that aren't left-leaning to kind of like express their opinion a bit?
You say, "Oh, is there a culture?" No, no, no. I think you firmly decided that,
Well,
like,
because
no,
there obviously is, of
definitely
course.
is a
You just decided a thing that like 85, generously 85%. 85%? I would love if Destiny would bring up anything about women's representation right now. Freedom says pretty much we should not know. We should not know, but nowadays the whole college has gone batshit crazy. Yep.
There
culture.
obviously is a
Okay,
culture.
there is this liberal orthodoxy that's being enforced within academia or whatever.
Progressive
Yup.
orthodoxy.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay. Aren't you a progressive yourself?
Yes. But I don't enforce the progressive orthodoxy. That's why I'm here at the University of Texas talking to kids.
But are you sure that that's really the progressive orthodoxy?
What for? What?
Oh my god.
What that like? If
This is sign language. She doesn't know what else to say. She doesn't like that he made a point. So she's just moving the goalpost. She's asking questions. She's changing the subject. Goes, I see what you're saying, Ludge. They act like they are impartial while shoveling garbage. Absolutely. Yep. Fish out of water.
if you went up to the majority of progressives and you gave all of these examples, do you think they would wholesale start endorsing like any of the repercussions that happen in all of these like awful anecdotes that you're giving?
Yes.
Where somebody's like you're
think
positive
so.
on that. Okay, just like
over
wholesale
50
disagree on
over
that. I think
51%,
you would be able to find plenty of liberal and left-leaning people who would be able to condemn any sort of actions that were taken. Like I know
there probably would be some, but I think that over half of like progressives would be in favor of like viciously getting rid of like certain types of thoughts that they feel like don't belong on college campuses at all.
like what types of thoughts?
Racist, anti-women, anti-LGBT, anti-this, transphobic, blah, blah, blah. Anything to do with, I don't know, actual equality instead of equity.
And how would you even like eliminate these thoughts? How would these progressives
you do it through
on
social
campus,
culture pressure, right?
And are they not allowed to do that?
I don't think they should on college campuses, no.
Are they not allowed to do that? Well, yeah, you're allowed to be a piece of shit, but is that what you're arguing for? See, this is what you get when you have just an unending desire to win the argument instead of just having a conversation. And I think this is the default. I think this is the default for most people is that, okay, I sit down and my goal is to win. It's not to converse. It's not to learn. It's not to discover. It's not to anything but win. I have my ideas and I'm going to stick to them no matter what. Like saying fish in water doesn't see the water, like the liberal on the liberal campus doesn't see the liberalism. Facts.
Enforce because I think that a college campus should represent.
This is what I mean. It's like wokeness just ends up turning into.
Wait, I'm answering specifically. You're not letting me respond to your questions.
Wokeness is anything I don't like.
No, that's not true. Okay, what I'm saying is that I think that on college campuses there should be a diversity of thought, right? I should be able to find on a college campus the local fascist squad talking about fascism, and if I don't like what they have to say, I should be able to ask my political science teacher hey,
that's
these
what
people
those
brought this up.
progressives are doing.
No, they're not. What they're saying is we need to protest, boycott them, and get them kicked off campus so that in our own poli-sci classes we can circle jerk about how ideologically pure and cool we are without ever having to address
At what point do your criticisms of the your local white pride group, fascist group start, in your opinion, going too far? Like you can only criticize them up to a certain point.
Action. Action. That's how you decide. If they get violent, then it's too far. If they don't get violent, it's not too far. If you have better ideas, you shouldn't worry about dumb ideas.
before you're like, hey, you're heading into territory where you're like your wokeness greed.
Yeah, I think the issue is
like
when you're
at
not
odds with other people's rights.
Yeah, when you refuse to platform it at all, I think that's an issue because then people don't even know how to engage with those different strains of thought.
As we can clearly see from this woman who has no idea how to engage with anything that she disagrees with, even though they are on the same side.
But you know who was proposing stuff like this? It was liberals, not progressives. Like back in 2019 during the presidential campaigns, Kamala Harris was the one who was going up on the debate stage and saying that she was making it up like a policy promise that she believed that Trump should be banned off Twitter. This was back in 2019.
Kamala Harris is a progressive, not a liberal, though.
What?
She was like Medicare for all. She was way to the left of Biden. She absolutely was.
Exactly.
She was.
She was.
But is she now?
No.
What? She was right before like the lockdowns, but what about now? What? Mike says, like Jordan Peterson says, we all know when the right goes too far, but when does the left know when they went too far? They don't. They don't. Because of exactly what we were talking about with the shifting of the Overton window and presenting biases as just matter of factly. When you present the idea that gender and sex are social constructs, then the kids just assume that that's neutral. And so to be anything misaligned with that is not only different, but is immoral. And that's why they say the right thinks the left is misinformed, and the left thinks the right is evil.
No, she fell in line because Biden is a boss.
You know who's disagreeing with her?
What?
The other progressive on the stage, Elizabeth Warren.
Good. And now look where she is.
And where's that?
Not where Biden is. Or Kamala Harris.
Final word. I told you I'm not here to make any sort of like.
Well, just give us a final thought. I gotta let people on it.
You give your final thoughts first, okay?
Do I even have to say anything?
My final thought is it's hard to quantify, like, because people ask, like,
maybe
well, how
it doesn't exist.
No, it's hard to quantify, like, because people say, like, show me like a poll or show me a thing of like why.
Yes, people ask for evidence.
Shut the fuck up!
Inconvenient things like citations for the assertions that I'm making.
You just told him to give last words, his last thoughts, his final thoughts, whatever the fuck. Shut the fuck up. Go the fuck away. How much longer is this bitch on this fucking thing? Really? She got like another 10 minutes of this. All right.
Where you have to actually prove the the empirical claims that you're making.
You're doing it right now. You're not giving me a chance to speak.
I'm not. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Go for it.
I think that you can see a huge trend both in the ideas and stuff that get passed around and enforced socially and college campuses among faculty and staff. We're getting more and more people that are complaining about, hey, I didn't fit the progressive orthodox here, so I quit. There was an anthropology department where people are complaining about this. I wish I could remember the school. I should remember. There was that University of Washington thing. There was stuff that happened, the Oberlin stuff, where they were like racist against the bakery for arresting a black person. You have the Brett Weinstein stuff. There's like story after story after story, and I acknowledge they are just stories, but like at some point, when not only are these stories becoming more frequent, when it gets support en masse by progressives, because you do see them generally across social media where we can quantify it, supporting these stories en masse, like, I don't know what piece of evidence you would need to see, like, oh, okay, maybe this is like a problem that we should start to worry about.
And this is the exact problem that I had with Anirudh. And the points that I was trying to make about this exact point. And he's like, well, show me the study. Where's the numbers? It's like, bro, not everything in the world is measured and already in a book. This shit's happening right now. There hasn't been time to study it the way that you want it studied. And you just decide that anything you can't know for certain is just not true. It's a fucking silly way to look at the world and to navigate life.
No, I do think that those individual instances are problems that have to be dealt with, but we already have the tools to deal with them. We have, like, you can appeal. You can appeal to your department chair if you're within academia. You can go to HR. You can file wrongful termination lawsuits. Like, we have the courts. Like, there are avenues for dealing with these things. And all of them,
which are all being corrupted by wokeness,
are available to these people. Like, you know, I would honestly say that, like, Weinstein's life has only been made better by that because he's now like a millionaire. Like,
to think that being chased down by a violent mob and forced out of your home and your career and the fact that, okay, maybe he has made money, but I know for a fact that he absolutely would have preferred to give that money back and to stay doing what he was doing. Talk about privilege.
Like, he just grifts off this entire thing. He'll never stop.
What is the grift? It fucking happened.
It was excellent for him. You know, like, on principle, like, I would disagree with him, but it was only to his benefit. Like, you think he's, like, has he truly been silenced? Like, I heard more about this man after that happened than before it. Before he was a nobody.
Yeah, for certain people.
Why do you think that is? It's so crazy how many times you could fucking supercut an hour long of just my stream. Say, why do you think that is? People just fucking say shit and don't even, it's coming out of their own fucking mouth. Did you even think about what you just said? Exactly, Mike. Well, like, that accident was the best thing that ever happened to him. He might not have use of his legs, but he got money. And, like, money is the only thing that matters. I'm a woman. All I care about is money.
They could benefit from it, but for the overwhelming amount of people, it's a negative thing. There are certain huge people that can benefit from, like, being canceled because they've got, like, the platform. They get, like, all the media
No, but he was
attention.
that person because he was a nobody before that, right? Or was he any sort
yeah,
of
but he
significant
managed to
professor?
spin it off into, like, a media career. But most people that get canceled, like, don't benefit from it. You agree with that, right?
Yeah, but, like, how many? That's, like, the problem is
Like,
that
99% of people that get hardcore canceled don't benefit from it. There are a
Exactly.
few that manage to spin it off into something successful, but
when you say, like, most,
Especially because when you're canceled for a stupid reason coming from the woke ideology. That is why. It's not because he was canceled because he did something so terrible. It's the complete opposite. That's why people want to hear from him. That's precisely why. If it was no big deal, then nobody would care what he had to say. But it was a big deal. And it was, what? A sign of a larger trend. It wasn't, you say. Well, then why do people care about what he has to say? How has he been able to take this one story and go on for years and years and years if nobody cares?
people who get canceled, though, like, are you making the assumption that, like, most people are, like, working class people and this is happening within, like,
people on social
workplaces?
media that are getting, like, canceled, people in college teachers that are tenure that are getting canceled, any, like, yeah.
Do you think social media is indicative of, like, the views of your average American? Don't you think it's
I think it's becoming
skewed?
more and more in line with the views of the average American, yes.
Okay, like, all empirical research, like, runs contrary to the assertion that you just made. Like, even if
Okay, hold on.
Where's Anirudh? I know he likes I'm not gonna go there. Never mind.
No, that is not true. One second. The empirical research says that Twitter tends to be more white, more affluent, and more young than the American demographic. But research will not tell you that opinions on Twitter don't represent the opinions of any Americans at all. There is a divergence, of course, but the opinions of online people.
That they don't represent
the opinions of
any
online
sort
people
of
15 years ago on the
Americans.
internet were crazy not resembling.
Fucking based. I love that shit. When and it's nothing to do with her being a woman, but doesn't hurt. When people are not letting you speak, people are continually interrupting you. You politely ask them, "Hey, hold on," and then you kind of get, "Hey, you need to stop," and then they still don't listen, and then you just fucking steamroll them. Shut the fuck up! I'm talking, bitch. Love that shit. Let's just watch it just for the pure love of the game.
Twitter don't represent the opinions of any Americans at all. There is a divergence, of course, but the opinions of
I never
online
said
people.
that they don't
hold on, the
represent
opinions of
any
online
sort
people
of
15 years
opinions of
ago on the
Americans.
internet were crazy not resembling real life people. Nobody went to the internet in 2002 to find out like what do Americans think about XYZ. But nowadays with social media, whose explicit goal is to connect as many people as possible across like political paradigms, of course you're going to see like Twitter today in 2022 is going to represent more American opinion than a GeoCities website in 1998. Because more and more people are connected to the.
Now she asks, why is that? Because obviously more people are online than in 1998.
Internet today.
I think only 35% of Americans are on Twitter, and then of that 35, I think it's something that like 25% of users, or like a vast minority of users actually account for the vast, like 97% of tweets.
Probably.
Okay, that is true. There's a very small percentage of Americans who are very active on Twitter. But that wasn't the question, was it? The question was, do the opinions that show up on Twitter represent what other people think, or the rest of the country think? And as Destiny said, of course there's a divergence. But increasingly, it's getting closer and closer because people just go by what they see on Twitter. This is the mob mentality that is wokeness, that is the problem. That is precisely what we're talking about. So even if it's only 3 fucking people, if everybody is fucking following those 3 people and saying the same shit as those 3 people, then it doesn't matter how many fucking people it is. Does it?
So we're truly
I'm one of
definitely
those.
talking about, yeah, we know that, like a vocal minority here.
Sure, it is still a vocal minority, but it's becoming more and more of a majority, right? Like 15 years ago, my mom would have never said that she gets like news on Facebook. Today, she gets her news exclusively on Facebook, and I think it's something like 65 or 70% of Americans say they get the majority of their news from social media.
Aren't
So they
you
might not be
telling on yourself a little bit by saying like my mom, or like citing like a personal example, kind of like
Okay, well,
showing.
I like to do the 1, 2. So the first was my mom. Okay, the second. So the second would be, I'm pretty sure that like the most recent poll that I've heard is like it's between 65 and 70% of Americans' primary news source is social media. Like, it's such a huge deal. You've got Facebook talking about like Cambridge Analytica and stuff in front of Congress. You've got Congress constantly asking questions of like, how do we deal with misinformation online? You've got some people that would assert that maybe.
Yeah, we definitely need misinformation. Yeah. That's a buzzword I know.
You're like on one breath, you're telling me like, well, social media, does it really represent much? And then on the other hand, you've got people saying, on the other hand, you've got people saying that like Russian interference in different social media platforms was so important. It might have been the tipping point for the election in 2016. So, I mean, it seems like it probably matters.
Oh, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but I'm saying like.
Then what the fuck are you saying? Just saying things. Just saying things. You're not saying anything. You're just arguing for the sake of arguing. But I don't know what else we can expect. There's about 3 more minutes of this. We're going to finish this up. And I'll meet you guys in Discord.
To what degree is it indicative and like reflective of, your average American voter? Because like you're saying, your average American.
Actually, fuck it. I'm done. I can't take her anymore. I'm done. She's infuriating. So the main thing that I wanted to talk about was the pro-life, pro-choice thing. I think that was very interesting how we can see where we align, or at least where I align with Destiny when it comes to the wokeness thing in general, but how different it is when it comes to the specific question of the procedure. Very interesting. I think it's important to be able to look at the same exact people, or the same exact person, and be able to say, in this area, they're dead wrong, but here, they're on point. If you are unable to do that, then you're destined to just find somebody who you're going to follow blindly. And so it's very important to be able to make that distinction. And hopefully I'll show you guys a little bit about how to do that. I don't know. What do you guys think? What did you guys think I am looking forward to hearing from you in Discord. I really hope you enjoyed this. I sure did. I love hanging out with you guys. You guys know that. This is my favorite. It's my favorite time of the week. But as always, I do have to say goodbye. But the party rages on. The link for the Discord is in the description. It's free. It's free. For now. I have a number in my head. Once we reach that number, I am closing the Discord. Everybody who's in there, you're Gucci. Anybody who wants to join, and you will want to join, is going to have to pay. Mike says, thank you, brother. Same to Mr. Pliskin. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys for hanging out. As you know, the channel is not yet monetized, so it would be a huge help if you could hit the Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Bitcoin, whatever. Also in the description. That would really help me out. But you don't have to do any of that. It's absolutely free to like, to comment, to subscribe, ring that bell, change the notifications to all. All that is free. It's free to share. It's free to take the URL of this video and put it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, other places on YouTube. It is free to do all of that. You know how terrible the notifications are on this platform. So what I need from you guys to make these parties what we actually want them to be, I need you to be the notification that I want to see in the world. Because you probably don't care too much. But be the notification we want to see. But even if you don't want to do any of that, guys, if you just want to sit there and watch me, that'd be awesome. If you just want to sit there, think about how amazing I am and how great this channel is, that would be perfectly fine too. I hope you guys enjoy this party. I am headed to Discord, so I hope to see you there. Thank you again. I am your host, Lutch, a.k.a. the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, I am out of here. Peace.